What?
Chief makes me get dressed up.
Sorry,
You will wear a tie today,
Oh, I
sir.
thought you were looking for money.
Oh, no. I said
Oh, in that case, sure.
All right. Well, to confirm, we're live, so let's get started. Thank you, and welcome. I'll call the meeting to order. FinCom, 6:33-ish, 34, February 5th evening. And I guess we can just jump into the agenda, unless anyone has a reason to do otherwise. All right, so got the police department represented by, good evening.
Chief Tom Perkins,
Chief
Captain
Perkins.
Kevin DiNapoli.
Captain DiNapoli, thanks. Thanks for joining us and for the service that you provide to the community.
Thank you.
So you're top of the order here on our budget review agenda, as far as that we're hitting the big departments again, obviously, just to kind of get back to what we learned during and since the big Saturday session, and anything that's changed, anything we want to revisit. In light of where we are with the budget in general, now having filled in more of the gaps. So I'll just kick it over to you, Chief, if you want to start, or Captain.
Well, what is your preference? Would you like
Okay.
us to go through the budget again in its entirety, or did you have some specific
questions. I do have a couple questions, but I'll leave it open. Is everyone pretty much brushed up on where we're at with respect to expenses and capital and organizational structure, to the extent it changes?
Essentially, there's no changes for the budget, especially in the areas of staffing. The areas that we did ask for increases were only areas where we tracked that we went slightly over as a matter of practice, which were just officers being out sick. We only budget 4 days per officer, and we've just been finding that we've been running a little bit over in that, so we asked for an additional 2 days per full-time officer, which would still, again, only bring it to 6. The other area was the specialty training. We found that we have had some significant turnover in the last few years with some of our senior officers, so we have to retrain the officers that we're bringing in those areas of specialties. And we just asked for a minor increase of that for an additional 20 hours. Special events, it's another area that we sort of noticed we were tracking a little bit over. I know the town is thinking of bringing back Wenham days and such. That's one of a busier days to staff. I think last year we tracked a little bit over due to the 375th anniversary, which was fine. We basically had the whole department in on that day.
Yep.
So we only asked for an additional 2,500 in that area. And that's it for salary increases, with the exception of one, which was a contractual increase under vacation, which is at the top of the salary reserve page, in case anybody's wondering specifically what I'm referring to. It used to be that full-time officers' vacation days were split 50-50 with the part-time officers. We have been trying to get more full-time officers working. We didn't do it by way of staffing, so this was one of the few concessions, so that now, instead of 50% of their vacation time being filled part-time, it's offered to the full-timers first in its entirety. So that was about a $16,000 increase. That would be it for salary increases. For expenses, which is just the other detail sheet in red, very few increases there. Uniform replacement, we've been running over in that area primarily because of filling some of those vacancies when an officer goes to the academy. By contract, all the equipment that they need to go to the academy gets paid for separately from their uniform allowance. So traditionally in that line item, we only had about $1,600. If an officer's uniform is damaged in the performance of their duties, that doesn't come out of their uniform allowance, that comes out of this account here with the $1,600. It's not utilized very often, but since we've been sending more officers to the police academy, we did ask for a $2,000 increase in that line.
So you had noted in the comments that you're sending an officer to the academy this year, or you're budgeting for one?
We were.
Okay.
There's been a medical development, so I am uncertain of the future of that presently.
Okay,
But I think that's probably the best way I could answer that
Yeah.
at this time.
sure, okay.
Um,
And I think that was noted along with a cost related to the equipment, right, or uniform?
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the other areas that we were tracking over in with phones, what happened with the phone budget is in 2012, we transferred everything up to the dispatch center, the RECC, which is now the North Shore Regional 911 Center. They transferred it back to us, and over that 4-year period, so we just kind of had to take a best guess when Peter Lombardi was here on what we thought that was gonna be. And we estimated a little low on that one. We've been tracking about $7,000 for our overall phone bills. And that's the landlines, the cellular, and well, actually, the cruiser air cards are right above that. That's one of the line items that might actually transfer back up to the dispatch center is the cruiser air cards. But I'd be hard pressed to give you a solid estimate on how long that would take at this time. The last time it took 18 months to get that all transferred. Between going through the state, who has to accept it, and the utility companies, it's a pretty complex process. So we did ask for a very minor increase there. The only other increase we asked for were in our utilities. Last fiscal year, they cut us by $5,000, and no huge surprise, we're tracking about $5,000 over presently for our utilities. Glad the lights are gonna help a little. They're not gonna help this year because we did have to fund the overage out of our budget, which we didn't budget for. So, we do have the actual right there in red for you to see. And that's it. That's the only other increases that we've asked for in our operating budget.
How is the, just generally, how's the change to the North Shore dispatch, or the state 911, I think it was called originally, from?
Yeah, so far, it's going fairly well. Both the town administrator and I sit on the executive committee. We just had our second quarterly meeting, and things are tracking actually pretty well. They've leveled off with their staff. They had some overturning issues with staff, and they've gotten that under control. And it does seem to be stabilizing, and as you're aware, the cost went to zero, so.
Right.
As long as the service maintains where it is, I think it's gonna be a decent future, because they're gonna eventually overhaul the entire radio system for all the agencies, which you'd be, take your breath away at what figure that would be just to do Wenham. We're in decent shape there.
Would that be mandatory, that compliance with that new system, or
It will be, but
participation in
they're
it?
gonna fund it, so.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
as long as we're with them, that they're gonna fund the state will
Right.
fund that, so.
And they're funded laptops.
Yep.
as well.
Yeah, in our long-range capital plan, we did have replacing all the cruiser laptops at $6,000 apiece. And the dispatch center is gonna do that for us, we believe, by this July, so that'll be coming out of the plan.
Great.
Capital, if you wanna go through that, or?
Of course, yeah.
Sure, oh, yeah.
Please,
Um,
please.
I think as part of the discussion here, it's on the Pleasant Pond.
Yep.
So, where are we with that? Where are we with that discussion on Pleasant Pond? Are we any, because we have 22,000, am I reading that right? I can't, 22,000 in here for gatekeepers and lifeguards in your budget.
Correct.
So if we were to, so we're considering changing the service model potentially.
Right.
Which involves discussions with the select board also, right? I mean, that's something that we're kind of jointly considering, but given the cost in excess of revenue generated by the program and indications from the other member partners, Hamilton not being interested in pursuing,
right.
we're forced to make these considerations. I think it's safe to say we wouldn't otherwise. And I guess the question then is, Chief, what would happen with those different options if we didn't, for example, have lifeguards? Would that simply fall from it, or how does that play out?
My understanding is that it has been explored that liability-wise, it would not be an issue not to have our lifeguards. We already have signage because there were times when we couldn't have a lifeguard down there, we would just have two gatekeepers, and we would put the signage out, swim at your own risk, and I don't wanna misspeak, but I'm under the impression that that's been explored and that would not be a problem going forward. My concern would be, I personally, and I believe Captain DiNapoli as well, from overseeing this for the last few years, would be really uncomfortable having only one employee down there.
Being a
Children.
gatekeeper.
They're children. I mean, they're 15, 16 years old. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Molly Bish incident, which happened years ago, but it was a facility very, very similar to our Pleasant Pond. She was a lifeguard and was working alone and was abducted, and eventually, they found her remains in the woods. And it's a secluded area. There are fishermen down there all the time, which come from all over the state. And I just would feel that having only one employee down there would just be too great a risk. I think we would have a very, very hard time filling it. I think most of the parents probably wouldn't allow it.
We have communication down there?
We do. We have a portable radio down there that, they can communicate, and as a backup, we have a call box. But they would have to actually go over and activate the call box. The radio system works pretty good down there, but it's not exceptional by any, it's down pretty low. I mean,
So the discussion is continuing. I guess that's in terms of how this unfolds with the select.
Right, in recognition of those other considerations, safety of employees, liability concerns, changes in exposure to not having, lifeguards. So it's not so much the lifeguard role per se, it's the single employee.
there would be a savings there if you went to two gatekeepers, probably not the savings that you're hoping for. I think when I did the rough numbers, it was $3,600 difference. The lifeguards make about $3.50 more an hour than the gatekeepers do. Some of the other discussions that we've had is reducing the hours. I would say from observations that we have traditionally opened at 10 a.m. and run until 6 p.m. Those first 2 hours are definitely the quietest of every day when there's not usually people down there. I know if you're talking about like a Cranes Beach or something like that, people start rolling in around 10 a.m. This beach, not so much. They start in around lunchtime, more so than not. So that would be another thing to explore, is reduce the hours from 10 to 6. I mean, from noon to 6.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a couple programmatic questions about the statistics.
Sure.
Chief, do you need a copy of the statistics and the narrative?
I think I probably have it here.
Read my mind.
It's right at the beginning of our packet.
Yeah,
That.
the three will
Here
punch
you
up. I've reordered mine, I think sufficiently.
Hey, sure.
It's somewhere in
It's
there.
right in the stack somewhere.
Exactly, it's right in the massive pile. Got it, thank you.
What is selective enforcement? Is that just different kinds of calls and types of calls and reasons why you would need to go?
No, selective enforcement is usually an area of town that either the captain and I feel, or where we've received complaints about motor vehicle traffic, speeding cars, et cetera. So we'll pass on to the sergeants to selectively enforce those areas more than, an area that we haven't had issues with. So the officers will call in an actual selective enforcement, and then that way, those citations, whatever they write while they're on selective enforcement, get attached to that call number. And so if a resident does call and say, I've been calling and nobody's doing anything about this area, we can say, well, actually, we've written 8 citations in 2 days in that particular area. So that's pretty
And-
much what selective enforcement.
And so there's a big jump, like 4 times, over 2016 to 2018, that's just because there were more, I was just wondering if there was some programmatic reason why.
Some of it was due to shortages in staffing. As we've gotten our staffing back up, there's more officers out on the street to actually do it. Traditionally, the full-time officers are more productive than the part-time officers, but not all across the boards. And that, and we've just really kind of, well, I can see, yeah, in one year they were very low. Our statistics, we have been dealing with a lot of records management issues. As we transferred up to the dispatch center, we changed record management systems.
Oh, yeah, I think I saw that in here somewhere.
It turned out to be a horrible system that we dealt with for about 4 years. Then Wenham on their own went back to our own records management
So are you
system.
talking about the Spillman to the IMC?
Correct.
Okay.
And so we went back on our own, even though the state said, we're gonna go to IMC. That seems to be the one that most departments wanna go to. We went a year earlier on our own. Now the state has gone fully back to IMC. But when we compile our data right now, we're doing it from 3 record management systems simultaneously and patching it together. So these are as accurate as we can do under the circumstances. But I would say with that number being as diverse as it is, that might have come from only one of the record management systems. Within a calendar year, we probably split somewhere near.
Well, and it
6
sounds
months.
like motor vehicle stops are sometimes connected to selective enforcement, and that went up too.
Yes.
I just didn't know if you guys had like, we're gonna focus on this issue
Well, we
because it's an
did.
issue.
Yep, that's
We made-
definitely a part of it.
There's been some movement with personnel, and we put a real vested interest in the officer-initiated activity. We've really.
Yeah, I've had personal experience with that too.
Hopefully positive.
Okay, that was my only question, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, stop talking.
Yeah. Don't incriminate yourself further. I don't know if I've mixed in some FY '20. Some of them say FY '20. You may find that as well. I think it is from FY '21. It's just the headers on, like salary reserve, for example.
Yeah, it's the wrong header.
Okay.
It should be green. Are you looking at green?
Green, for example. Yep.
Green salary reserve, orange
Oh,
for
yeah.
the expenses, and then what was
Yep.
the chief red? Is that the third color this year?
Expenses are red.
It should be, for FY '21, it should be salary reserve in blue and expenses in red. The green and orange, I think, were FY '20.
That's right, that's right.
Oh, okay, so mine are black and white in my book for FY '21. That's why.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
But if it says FY '20, it's FY '21, right? They're not
If it
last
says-
year's
no,
number.
if it says FY '20, it's FY '20. So you should see 20 and 21. 21
Oh,
in
gotcha.
grayscale.
Oh, I
See,
see.
these two
So
together.
crumple up the
So-
orange.
Or use it for comparison purposes, but mostly crumble it up.
Okay, don't use it for the FY '21 is the main
Yeah,
thing.
FY
Don't
21
assume
is-
it was just a column header that didn't get updated.
Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you.
Because
So
I
those
do have
separate
21
pages.
in grayscale
Yeah,
in
see,
mine.
Yeah.
and this doesn't have a 21 column either.
Right. Salary is now blue, not green.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't
no,
know,
salary
I definitely need
reserve,
to
yeah,
flip
salary
my book
reserve,
out,
yeah.
people, which
yeah.
is my problem right
Okay,
now.
cool. Different structure but works, more detail is good. Is there any activity that's like, that you feel is not like an efficient
Don't mind.
resource use at times, that you have to make changes to any of these programmatic pieces because things aren't kind of playing out the way you'd want them to?
We have it structured pretty good right now.
Yeah.
We have the detective actually going out, being proactive, going to meetings, and that's something we weren't able to do before. And if we lose that, we're gonna lose a lot of ground. Detective Lucatoni has been an incredible asset to us. He comes to us with a lot of experience as well as clearances that we've never had before in the police department. He's been able to get intelligence that has been quite an asset. He's networked with other agencies and really, I mean, we've worked in like the last 6 months with the Postal Service, the FBI, all things that before would have been very difficult to do. So I would say that, the investigative service, which we utilized a lot during this time last year, we had the houses being broken into at night and such, and You know, I'm glad to say it's been a little quieter right now, but that's not to say it's not gonna happen again, and yes, thank you. But we're even better prepared for it when it does, so.
Yeah, he was just at Rotary last week doing a presentation on scams, and then he was over at the senior center maybe 6 months ago, did a similar presentation on scams and what to look out for, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback on that. There's been some really positive, on a weekly basis, running into folks that bring up stuff about it and how much they enjoyed it and what they got out of it. And as the chief said, we're lucky to have that with his experience, and just the ability to work investigations that otherwise may not have been able to been worked to the extent that he's able to do because of his knowledge and experience. So it's good, we're lucky.
Probably our busiest shift right now is the day shift, and it's because the captain's doing a lot with accreditation. We're up for accreditation recertification this coming year, and I can't even begin to tell you how busy that year is as compared to the other two, but between that happening and I've been answering calls lately, just to give you some sort of an idea of how busy we are during the day, and that's fine. We're making it work. I don't think, fortunately, in the state of the state here, I think we're in a good position not to need anything really extra right now, but we don't really have a lot to give up either. And
Right.
I know that's not an easy thing for you folks to hear, but that's the reality of it, is our budget is built around the police department running efficiently with nothing major or unexpected happening. If it does, we just don't budget for that, unfortunately.
Speaking of unexpected things happening, there was some emergency preparedness work that you were doing, I think.
Yes, we had quite a year with emergency management, and I'm very glad to say it really didn't cost the town a penny. We got the federal government grant, and they wound up reimbursing everything and then some. I mean, not just for our agency, for the fire department, for the DPW, every worker that went, they wound up doing it. And Bob Breaker, who was our emergency management liaison, applied for the grant. He got an intern from Mass Maritime Academy, of all places, but we had free work from him, and it was quite an eye-opening experience as far as how bad it could get and how quick it could get. We did a disaster drill where the natural gas station that comes up above ground right down next to Enon Village had a terrorism act occurred to it, and it was eye-opening. But it was very, very good training. They brought in people from all over the country as instructors and worked with us. And I think the biggest credit they gave us was certainly not, a big metropolis or anything, but we had statistically better turnout than, major cities that have performed the same thing. The credit was the town administrator was there for the entire process, and they don't see that a lot with public officials and things, so it was good.
It was crossover beneficial as well because it met a bunch of accreditation standards as well with the multi-jurisdictional exercise and emergency response. We did one the year prior on a lesser scale, just a smaller tabletop exercise, and that was still beneficial, but that was just with the neighboring towns and a few other agencies, much smaller scale. But again, over a 3-year cycle, mass accreditation looks for that, and it has to be multi-jurisdictional and has to involve different agencies. And Bob did a great job, but we got everybody involved and from all different facets, whether it was federal, state, local, and fire, police, and it was really good.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions on the expense side before we look at capital?
I have some questions that aren't in this budget, but could you comment on your experience with the school resource officer so far? And then also, do you have any thoughts or comments about the ALICE training that I think you guys were involved in the schools? And then it's still school related. Were you involved in some of their capital planning for safety and security? I'm assuming yes, but those are just kind of 3 things where the Wenham Police Department is involved in the school. And I'm just kind of wondering if you could kind of give some general thoughts or comments about the status of those 3 things.
Sure. I would say the SRO was long overdue. It was definitely something that Chief Stevens and I had discussed on a regular basis as far as just one thing that as law enforcement officials, we weren't meeting, that nationwide seemed to be going in that direction. So I am glad that there's a program in place. As far as the participation in it, we were asked to go before the school committee with Hamilton for the discussion about it, and both Captain DiNapoli and I went, and we spoke briefly on it, but as far as the position itself, Captain DiNapoli sat on the selection committee as far as picking the individual who is the SRO. And I understand now that it's being looked at from a whole bunch of different angles and everything, but I would say that the program itself is very necessary. I really.
And is Wenham involved in helping advise on what the SRO does in terms of programming in the different schools at the different levels?
We supplied quite a bit of documentation that got put into place. There is a state template that
Oh.
really is what is used.
I think I saw that, yeah.
Yeah,
When we
so,
looked at this to begin with.
And it's less official, less formal, to your point, that the, talking with the personnel over at Hamilton on a regular basis kind of accomplishes the same thing as well, trying to keep each other informed. You know, that's the biggest thing that we're working through now, is the communication part of it, of what is expected to know with our kids there, you
Mhm.
know, and what's not necessary, but what is, and you kind of learn by doing too. Yeah, it's very gray, but we're all hands on deck, we get along very well. And, you know, coming from an agency where we had 3 full-time SROs in my prior agency, that's helping. And, you know, understanding what the duties are, and it's new for everybody involved, including the kids and the parents too. So it's kind of, this first year is a real big year for everyone.
the chief and I just met last week on it, so we
Mhm.
are keeping the communication going.
Mhm.
As far as the Alice program,
Mhm.
that is probably one of the best things that the town and the schools have got together on in quite a while. We have been very active in that. We have four officers that are participating in those drills, and we go to every single one of them. We've been doing it at the private schools as well. It's not just the public schools, but it's very good to see, and that program. And that program has grown over the years, too. It's not exactly what it was. We had 2 officers certified in it over 10 years ago, and it just didn't take off with the schools. So we're very pleased that it's in place now, and that we're as active and involved with it as we are. The last one was the capital safety for the school. I can speak to that way back in 2005, I think, was the first time that a sergeant in Hamilton, and I was a sergeant at the time, went through and did an entire safety survey for every school in the district. And they are working towards that, and they have taken our advice on quite a few things. There's been, you know, some improvements since then. There's been some other committees that have come and gone with the change in leadership at the schools. But yes, we have played an active role in that. As far as the budgeting and the money, I haven't seen a lot of that, to be honest with you, but as far as the recommendations and such, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick point of clarification on the SRO salary position, is that, I have forgotten, is that with the schools, or is that with the town of Hamilton now? Or is that split
That
between-
might be, yeah.
They're a Hamilton PD officer,
So it's out of the Hamilton budget?
correct.
On non-school days. I
Yes,
think
no,
on
it's
school
the
time.
school,
Yes.
when he's in the school during the school days, when he's there, the school's paying for him, but the days he's like, the weekends when he's on duty
Oh,
at
so it's
Hamilton,
a split
it's a
in
split.
the town of Hamilton, no,
But
the
he-
school
yeah, but
committee
it's-
budget and the town of Hamilton budget.
That's what my
Yeah.
understanding.
For FY
But they're,
'21,
like, they're
prior
cutting
year.
Hamilton the money, yeah, but he's a Hamilton town employee,
He's a Hamilton employee.
yeah.
That relieves a lot of the questions about, you know, who's paying him in the summer and what's he doing while the kids
Yeah.
are on summer break and stuff, so it's probably the
That's all
best.
being kind of, continue to be worked on.
Yeah.
I did note, just in terms of safety, in the school budget, they had a fairly significant line item for cameras and points of entry,
Yeah.
security, new security systems, so.
Yeah. more and more schools, as they're being built, are
Yeah.
coming standard with that, so it doesn't surprise me that they're.
That was discussed fairly in detail the other day, I think.
Very, very good questions, and just one more follow-on on that. So I'm sure you indicated you've been partnering with the schools in the past. It sounded like kind of going back a little ways on the security questions and opportunities to improve the situation at all the schools, security-related. And I know you'd be responsive to questions more recently, but have there been any specific kind of partnerships or outreach from the administration or school committee to kind of work with, and maybe they're doing this with Hamilton as well, but from the town of Wenham, is there an update to their way of looking at it that they've sought your guidance on, or?
Not specifically with capital items. We do meet several times a year, like once by statute, and there's been a couple of other orientations whenever they have new staff. We send staff
In the
to them.
CCI meetings, that's.
Yeah, so that's true. Every month we meet with the schools, the district attorney's office, and the Hamilton Police and the Wenham Police meet to discuss any, school safety issues and such like that, in any way any of the entities can help each other.
Mhm. And one more question just occurred to me. The SRO will also cover Bucher, or be
Yeah,
part of the Bucher
it'll
school?
be all the schools. We do have officers that also spend time at Bucher.
Right, I thought so.
The SRO will get, some additional specialized training, but Hamilton reached out right away when the program went live and made sure, we were fine with them coming to the Bucher school, and of course we were. We work, Kent Richards is the SRO, and we work great with Kent, and he pops down on a regular basis to update us on issues.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
On to capital? Okay. Should we start with the cruiser, maybe? Or wherever you want to start, I should say, if you want to go through.
So, it's,
And I have to say that prioritization is always as helpful up front. I mean,
Sure.
we'd ask anyway, but
well,
these things change. so.
one of the lines for 12,133 is the lease payment for an existing cruiser. So that one, we already have the car. It's just one of the 3 payments. The additional car we're asking for this year, which, technically we're only asking for the one car, is a frontline patrol vehicle. We keep them for 3 years, and we get in the area of between 90 and 100,000 miles on them. We try not to go over that 100,000 miles because you lose a significant amount of money on trade-in value. A few years back, we were pushed and encouraged to keep the cars for longer, more miles. We tried that. Unfortunately, these aren't cars that, they're not personally owned, they're not driven by 1 or 2 people, they're driven by 25 different people. And it's different. They show wear and tear in areas that, your family sedan wouldn't. The other thing is these vehicles, it's necessary for them to operate at high speeds. And trust me, we have had some that it was just too reckless to do that. And I'm referring to the area back in like 2009 and 2010 when we would skip a year. This actual schedule that we work off of, which is 1 frontline vehicle each year, every 3rd year an administrative vehicle, was developed by the police department, the finance committee, and the board of selectmen as, a minimum basis that really we do need to adhere to. As I said, a few years ago, we were pushed to try to, push it further. We wound up having to take 4 vehicles off the road instantly. So sooner or later, the officers started refusing to drive them. There was carbon monoxide issues, there was holes in the floor. We were at town meeting and we had the big slideshow, and literally you could see the yellow line by looking down. It was bad. And they wound up having to bring in an outside agency that, nobody from the department knew or anything else. They took a look at these cars and that day took 4 cars off the road. So we literally had to call the sheriff's department and borrow cruisers just to patrol the streets in. So it's been tested. I'm sympathetic. I would love to tell you that there's a way to get more time out of the cruisers, but short of having the guys sit in the station and not patrol, it's just not feasible, it's not doable, and I just wouldn't recommend it.
Chief, how old's the one you're looking to get rid of or trade in?
So that would be currently Unit 1721. It has 65,000 through, well, actually, this was 2 weeks ago when we went to the selectmen's meeting. So it's in that area, probably 67,000 miles on it. And that car right now has 6 months to go to get us to January 1st.
That's when the lease ends, 6 months?
Those ones aren't leased. The frontline cars
Oh.
we purchase outright.
Oh,
You know, you could, but it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. The lease doesn't save you any money, it just spreads the payment out. And at one point, when we had that incident happen, and those 4 cars were taken off the road, in 2012, we had to buy 4 vehicles all in 1 year. And we wound up leasing them because it was such a big payment. But the problem is, now you had that lease payment for 5 years. In that 5-year period, we had to replace some of the other cars, so now you have a monstrous lease payment and you're buying cruisers. It just, I would recommend shying away from it, but it doesn't really impact the department that much, whether you lease or buy. We just need the vehicles.
what year was the car?
I'm sorry?
What year is the car?
The car we're looking to replace is a 2017, so it'll be
Gotcha.
2020, 3 years.
Yeah.
And we never really get to replace them on July 1st. It's usually around September by the time we actually get them outfitted and in and separate with the other vehicles.
So you'd look to trade this one in to
Exactly.
and purchase one? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Is
Sure.
there any discussion with Gordon College to provide a cruiser again? And like a
We-
payment
I-
in kind?
I sat in on all those negotiations, and I would just say Mike Lucy did an outstanding job of working every angle I've ever seen anybody work in my life. And when we all got up from that meeting, they shook our hand and said, "We're going to do this, but don't ever come back and ask us again." So I don't know how positive I would be. They didn't technically donate a police car. They actually donated $40,000 to the town. We just wound up having a situation, and I don't recall exactly what it was, but it had something to do with the way the Capitol was lined up, that it may have had to go back to town meeting for some reason. So since they had that money, they decided to spend it on a police cruiser. But they were not overly receptive to a pilot program of any duration.
How did it come about, that $40,000 agreement?
Months and months of negotiation. Why they picked that number, I don't know. I think that may have been what the additional cost associated for that year may have been, but I'm not 100% sure. That was a few years back now. So the fire department does get reimbursed from Gordon College. So what we tried to do was show a pilot that, you know, the police department respond as often as the fire department. And then also we go to additional calls there for service that are, you know, strictly police related. So we go to all the medical, all the fire calls, but then we also go for any police related services. And
I actually thought that I thought you got reimbursed for those. So it's only the fire department?
only the fire department, the police
Oh, there's
department
not
does
reimbursement for the
No.
police department?
No, never has
I don't
been.
know how I misunderstood that. all the
Sorry.
time. Oh, no, it's, yeah.
Is that's not in your stats then, is it specifically carved out in terms of Gordon
Specifically
College?
Gordon College,
Yeah.
as soon as we get our stats corrected, which there is a snafu right now with the new system up at the dispatch center, I believe that is
Yeah, you can
data that we can
isolate it.
get
I mean, it'd be a good
very
number.
easily.
Be a good number to have to,
Yep,
if we went back for negotiation
Yeah.
purposes, to say,
Yeah.
you know,
we were able to provide it last time when they asked us for it, and,
I'm sure you have it, you gotta kind of manually
Yep.
pull it
Yep.
out.
yeah, the only issue right now, just so you folks know, is because all 5 towns use the dis, if you try to do, your activity, you're getting everybody's activity. So they're just,
They can't separate it yet.
yeah, they thought they had it licked, and they just emailed us back yesterday, as a matter of fact, and said, we gotta try one more thing.
Just a
Annual
quick
tax
question on the
clock's
40,
ticking.
I know, and the annual town report clock is
on the
ticking.
42,000 that you have
Yeah,
for the next several years,
yep.
does that include equipment markings, or do you
That-
just transfer equipment and the
So what we
lights
can
and all the electrical?
So what we can transfer, we transfer. A lot of the lights do transfer. What they do to us, though, is Ford Motor Company doesn't always play well, and they change. As a matter of fact, this year coming up, the Explorer is all redesigned. So some things like the radio box and the cage may fit, they may not fit, we don't know yet. Lights will definitely fit. Graphics, those go with the car. We have to repaint the car and redo the graphics. We
Is
are,
that budgeted in here somewhere?
that's all in the 42,000.
That's in the
That's in the
42.
42,000.
And
Yeah,
Chief, the trade-in value is included in that number as well,
that
correct?
is, yes, that
What was
does.
the trade-in value? Like
It
5,000 or
varies.
6,000 bucks?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's good. Sometimes if you go over that 100,000 mile, you're looking at 1,500, $2,000, and, yeah, they, you know.
And we are gonna be changing the markings as well with
Yep.
this new cycle. We're gonna go to a black and white traditional
Oh,
cruiser, just for more visibility. Right now, the current markings, it's almost like a navy blue on
Oh, yeah,
blue.
The
I-
ghost
It's blue on
graphics.
I know it's.
It's blue on blue.
So we're looking for more, our guys are out there, they're working hard, and we just want more visibility for the public to see that they're out there more and with the traditional black and white. And you can order, there's so many black and whites now that you can order them from the factory. They come black and white, and you can do that, so.
Give us like a 1-week window to get used to it.
Yeah, right,
Sorry,
All my teenage drivers.
yeah.
Well, it'll benefit them.
I drive slow.
I would imagine the black and white is safer for both the citizen and the officer, because everyone knows,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know, that it's, that blue on blue is hard to identify.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
actually,
Unless you see the blue plates.
a lot of places started going to it, believe it or not, as a calming effect.
Yeah, I remember you
You
saying
don't
that.
feel as intimidated having a black and white car sitting in front
Part
of
of
your
the
house.
motivation at one
But we've
point,
seen
yeah.
kind of the negative reaction of it too, where
That's interesting.
it's, we'll be helping a neighboring community and you can't even tell one of them's there because
No.
it's marked, but
No.
it's
You
not.
can see it, but it's
Yeah, yeah.
tough to see.
To your comment earlier, Chief, on the Essex County, the consortium, the emergency dispatch, is that the computers that they might be picking up for the cruisers?
yes.
Are these the MGT units?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So is that the FY '22 is I mean, I know it's a year out anyway, but that
Yep.
may,
That
Fall
will
off.
most likely go
Okay.
away.
all right, great. You gonna ask the same or something?
I was gonna ask the same question, thank you.
Cool. And then, so administrative vehicle is the other piece.
Yeah.
How many administrative vehicles do we have?
2.
You're looking to replace one of them.
It's already been replaced. This is
Okay.
a 3-year lease payment.
Oh,
This will
gotcha.
be the second payment.
Cars we own, you're not replacing it.
Correct.
Got it, okay, thank you.
So do you roll into a new lease payment in '22 for the second car? Is that the way that works?
Yeah, or the town could choose to buy it outright. But yes, by spreading it out the 3 years, you don't get the relief of the 3 years, but you do take the
You
shock of
keep
it
those
too.
longer, you don't pile up the mileage.
Exactly,
on those.
exactly.
Any questions on
That's pretty
on those? So am I correct in assuming we don't, so FY '20 laptops, we can kind of ignore this one for now?
Yep.
Set that aside. Plate reader, rifles, and security cameras remain?
The rifles were the only other one on the docket for this year.
Yep.
We actually did put them up last year, and we were asked to bump them, which, after speaking to the firearms instructor and the armorers, they felt we could go another year. We do track the amount of training and ammunition that does go through them, and that's around when you get to the replacement age. When I first started, you would go to the firearms range once a year, and then any other time an officer wanted to shoot, it was encouraged but not mandatory. It's mandatory now 4 times a year, and then we, will sometimes go even more than that, so you literally have 4 times the ammunition going through these weapons, so it doesn't take as long where we used to get 10 years out of them, and actually, these are probably coming up on 10 years anyway, actually. But we were asked at the Board of Selectmen's meeting if we could do it over 2 years. I have had a discussion with the armor, and he does feel that that's something that we could probably do. So it was never 14 rifles, it was 10. It's just $14,000.
Oh, gotcha. I had heard, yeah, just
Yeah,
7
there was just a
from
little
14.
confusion
Gotcha.
there. It
Yeah.
might have even been a typo on my part somewhere along the way,
Yeah.
but it is only 10, and,
Right.
Is the cost still 14?
yes, well, but
Well-
we'll spread it out over 2 years if,
Oh,
you know,
so
5 and 5,
7,000
7 and 7
21
maybe.
7,000
Yeah.
22.
yeah.
And that's five rifles a year? Is that the way it works?
Yeah.
Are there other, so what about like other, service weapons? Because that's specific to rifles. Do you have like a line item for other
We-
firearms?
We do. In our firearms training, what we've been able to do, and it's under expenses, and it's under operations, and it's ammunition and
Oh, I see.
firearms.
Yeah.
What we have found is that when we do go to replace our handguns, the trade-in value for the handguns is so good because they're able to the manufacturer is able to turn around and sell them in other parts of the world, that we haven't had to ask for a capital item for that. We're literally able to like replace those at $150 a weapon after the trade-in. The rifle's not quite as much.
Okay.
You know, there's all sorts of issues with assault rifles that probably detract from that a little bit. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I know it's not anywhere near as good a trade-in value. But we're literally being able to use the handguns for 4 or 5 years and then trade them in for almost what we paid for them.
Makes sense. Thanks. Any other questions on those updates? Plate reader next, I guess. This has come up before, I think, in past years.
That's, I mean, I'm not sure what that was marked as far as a priority, but we would never ask for that in a
In
fiscal
current
year that was
environment.
difficult. We did get it as a grant it was several years ago now, but we utilized it for about 6 months, and we had some pretty positive results. So back 3 years ago, I think, when we started the 5-year plan, we did put it on there for down the road, but again, it's not something I would ask for in a difficult fiscal year.
I think it's something, Chief, that we've kicked down the can already.
Yeah.
Since we've established this current capital planning model a
Yeah.
couple of years ago. That's already been one that the chief has come in and said, push that one down.
Yeah, okay, great. I should have teed up the
I
yellow
did have
anyway. Yeah.
Which I noted last time we talked, a concern about that in terms of civil liberties,
Yep.
protection of information,
Yeah.
that kind of an issue. And, I was doing some reading on it today, and some cities and towns have discontinued, some have continued.
Yep.
But the biggest concern that I had was, if we did this, let's say we did it in 2 years or 5 years.
Sure.
A system, and this is not anything to do with finances, but it's my own opinion, that would delete the information at the end of a day. So the biggest civil liberties complaint on this issue was that it stores and stores and stores and stores. So Jim goes and buys a 6-pack of beer every 3 weeks down at the package store. That could be read in certain cities and towns because they don't have them on the cruisers. They have them on the cruisers, plus they have them on telephone poles or
Right,
or
right.
where- So it became a civil liberties kind of thing that I just think should be, if it is considered in the future, to be thrown into the
Sure.
discussion.
For our utilization purpose, all they did was take the place of the officer typing in the license plate. So they didn't have access to anything that we don't already have access to every day. It was kind of a safety issue where the officer, in this day and age, when everything's hands-free and you're not supposed to touch anything, the officers now, it is still legal for those officers to be driving and typing in license plates to the laptop computers. All these cameras did for our utilization was take a picture of that license plate, run that license plate, and whatever information was attached to that license plate, bring it up on the screen.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying, because I know they did get used for.
Was that on selected plates, or was that on every plate that passed the
It would be
officer's car?
every plate that went by the car, it would run, but it would only give back information on someone that had an expired registration, a suspended or revoked
A warrant.
license, a warrant.
Or-
Yeah, it didn't give you information on every car that went by, no. Only on ones that
If somebody was,
had a flag, basically.
yeah, entered in as a missing person or something, or there's a lot of,
It pointed out some excellent uses.
Right.
And reduction and stuff. Anyway, it's not this year, so we'll let it go. We could go on in that discussion.
Yeah, no good questions. I think that wraps up the capital.
We're
For the police
glad to make
department.
ourselves available offline anytime if you think of any follow-up questions or anything like that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate the support.
Do you remember how many years the record
I don't. Chief, Captain, how many years has the detective that you were talking about earlier doing all the great work, how long has he been with the police force?
He's been a police officer, correct me if I'm wrong, over 25 years.
yeah, 25 years
And
full-time.
he's been
And
with
with Wenham?
Wenham for
Coming up on a year.
Coming up on a year.
Okay,
so
great.
Done a lot of
Yeah.
work in one short year.
How many detectives do you have?
Just
Just
the
the
one.
one.
Just one. Did he replace Detective Marsh?
Detective Marsh is now Sergeant Marsh. So.
Oh, excellent. Oh,
Yes.
great. Okay,
Yep,
good.
yep. So we replaced him, but for good reasons.
Good. That's what we'd like to hear.
Yep.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
you.
Good night.
Eric, good timing. Great.
Good night, thank you.
Have a good evening. Thanks again. Eric, perfect timing.
Excellent.
You watching on YouTube in the car, waiting for the last second?
Upstairs.
Thanks for joining us. Any water in the handout packet, or are we just going to the book for this? I forget if there were any updates from the vacuum, Chris. Just the book, right?
And then the,
One piece, wasn't there?
Yeah, here's Weston Sampson.
oh, yeah, sorry, Jackie, she put, it wasn't a bid for their,
Oh,
Quote for the data.
okay, great. So I'm sure we'll, oh yeah, I had questions about that too. Back of the book?
There actually will be a change my board just voted on, so.
Okay. Yeah, some late breaking updates maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks again for joining us.
You're welcome.
Do you want to, I'm sure we'll have a handful of questions, but do you want to just kind of start an overview of where you're at in your kind of process or any changes since we last went over the water department?
So the change that we do have is the expense for indirect costs. So in our expense line, we're going to be adding $100,000 to our total budget, and they just voted on that.
Okay. The water commission?
Yes.
Yep. Is that, so will that be a new line altogether under expenses?
That'll be a new line under expenses, yes.
Call it indirect costs or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll probably actually lump the employee benefits line item in with that also, just so it's a little bit cleaner. Because it's part of the indirect cost, so.
So the, what's the jump there from 34,500 to 60,000?
New employee.
New employee, that's right,
Yes.
yep. Okay.
So I just wanna make sure I have this right. So we're adding 100,000 in indirect expenses?
Yes,
To the expense line?
yeah. Bring it to 534,965, I believe. Total budget.
Does that include the capital number, or am I looking at the wrong page?
Yeah, I'm not on the right. I'm on expenses,
What page are we
5,200.
on here?
It's the one with the graph at the bottom. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, this is what you're looking for. So this is
5,200
the salary
expenses.
roll-up.
Right there.
And then follow-up page after that is the expense
one
and
after that,
capital
okay.
roll-up with the graph at the bottom. Should be right after the narrative. Yep, that's the right one in your left hand.
Oh, here you go.
Okay,
So we're
So-
just adding a line that's not on here yet?
This is
okay,
the one.
and that 100,000 is being added to
Yeah,
the
the-
445.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's being added to 435, yes.
Well, in total, yeah, so it would be under expenses,
Yeah,
which are
Yes.
166,950,
yeah.
so that would increase.
Yeah, that would go to
266.
266.
Oh, all
950.
right, okay. And where does that revenue come from? Does that come from a change in the rates, or is it, how's that?
It would be a rate change, effective July 1st.
Additional expense so ultimately, how would this play out? Is this a transfer from the water department's
No, it's just it's our operating costs
operating costs?
based
Right.
on water rates.
Right,
We haven't nailed down an exact number on the water rate yet.
Yeah.
We have a couple options out there. And they'll make that decision before, within the next few months.
But I thought the operating costs was mainly happening here at Town Hall with town staff? And that's where some of this, what's the percentage of that 100,000 that's?
I'm passing that around right now.
Late breaking
Did
news.
I miss one? Oh, sorry.
any chance you have one more comment? Thank you, Chris. Cheers. So, is one of those options like a phased-in approach or something like that with regard to any rate changes? Just curious how,
No, they discussed it a little bit, just how we want to implement it, and it's going to be a one-time increase. So they didn't feel that phasing in over over 2 or maybe even 3 years would be any benefit to it, so.
got it. And then I guess the other questions that your committee would answer are sort of like how you break it out over tiers, right? Like how you allocate or.
Yes,
that
yeah,
should
like
increase expenses.
before this meeting, I gave them 7 different options. We've got from what I gave them, and we didn't have a specific number on what the increase was gonna be at the time. So now that we know what the number is actually gonna be, I'm gonna give them a few more options of, a base rate increase, which guarantees us some income. That way we can know we have at least that coming in to help offset.
Right.
And then probably either a base rate plus just the first tier increase, or a base rate with a first tier and second tier increase. But I'm gonna work all those numbers for my board, and they'll make the decision based on what I give them.
Makes sense.
Quick, will the highest users have a higher rate, or would that stay the same?
We already have a real high rate for the conservation rate, so it will affect obviously everybody, because everybody gets hit with the base rate plus
Cumulative.
both the tiers.
Okay. Just curious, thanks.
It's progressive as you go up in
Yeah.
your usage.
Yeah.
It's like a tax rate.
Alex, this is for my clarification. So we had this discussion about indirect costs that are absorbed by town government. Is
Right.
that, just so I'm understanding this, is that the 94,000?
And they approved up to 100 as with the buffer or something, is the difference?
We wanna make sure that we don't shortchange ourselves, and our rate is gonna cover
Okay, so
whatever
we're
increase there is.
Okay, I just wanted to understand. So the 100,000 is gonna cover now what we
94.
identified as indirect costs that support the water department, but
Correct.
hadn't been included in the budget before.
Correct.
Right, okay, thank you.
And percentage-wise, how much of an increase is this? 20%, right, give or take?
The budget is 434, and we're adding
Okay.
100,000 to it, so.
What's the FY '21 OPEB contribution listed on the water indirect?
So that's what the town, we put in, every year, we increase our contribution to OPEB by 10,000.
Right.
So in FY '21, it will be up to 60,000.
But why is
Got
it
it.
on
I was
the
just wondering why it was on the water page.
Because
Yeah.
water is part of their OPEB, water is part of OPEB, so, they have, right now, we based it on, their 2 employees out of the people there, so it came out, so that's where
the 2,400 here is.
it came
is their
from, the
portion.
percentage,
Got it.
their percentage of the 60,000 contribution that we'll be making.
That's a good question. Okay.
Well, and it's really 2.4 employees,
Sorry,
because
yeah.
we do have, the administrative assistant is part-time. part of their time is covered by water, and then some other town departments chip into that
Oh,
salary as well.
I see the line item above, thank you. I was looking for that when Dave mentioned 2,400. So
Yes.
as a percentage of the 60,000, is that percentage constant throughout?
The OPEB was a little bit different. All the other expenses minus the salary, minus the finance and the town administration, those are based on salaries, but all the other ones is 5%, and that's based on the percentage of the water budget to the town budget was 5%.
Got it.
Excluding the schools.
Yes,
Right.
excluding the schools, yes.
So before this indirect cost proposal, benefits, insurance, OPEB, audit services all came out of the town hall budget?
Yes. Or, different, obviously the salaries came out of, finance salary and the town administration and, different, but besides that,
Yeah, I get-
town council had its own line, but it was all part of the general fund, all part of the town's general fund. It may not all come out of the town hall expense line, but it was all part of general fund. The citizens were picking it up on the town side.
But I wanna draw your attention to, there's a box that's circled towards the bottom of the page, and that does highlight what, the water department had been paying before. For just some clarity, they were paying for their, their software accounting, software, their water billing, their postage, their debt service, their health insurance. So what you're looking at, that first top list that Chris put together, are just the things that do contribute to the water department being able to function. They wouldn't be able to afford to do those things as easily without the town side, but, so this is more just collecting the ones that hadn't been collected before. There were some that were being billed before that were Eric was budgeting for.
Yes.
Will the town and/or water department be kind of reaching out to kind of educating residents on the changes to when you settle upon the fee
Yes.
impact, right?
Yeah, there'll be a rate increase notice to all
To
residents.
residents, yep. And do you have a rough idea of what that'll be yet, or still working through the options?
Still working through the options. The options, out of the options I gave them, the one that would cover what we have to put in there is a $13 increase to the base rate to bring it from $32.50 to $45.50.
Okay, and that's
And also a $1.50 increase to the first tier, so it would end up being $3.90 per 1,000 gallons for 10,000, so it'd be basically a $15 increase to the. Quarterly, yes. I have those all broken down. I did send that to you, so if they want to pass that along to them, just what I had sent them for options, if they want to just look at that. But we'll be looking at other options too.
So in the town's perspective, that comes off our books, just as an expense, no revenue aspects.
Added revenue.
It's added revenue that we can use to offset expenses.
I got you, okay.
Are those required to go towards, in this split, to each of the departments, or is it into the general fund, or how does that?
This will just get built into, like, up to the top part, like, almost not part of the local seat, but it'll be accounted for like that.
Into a local receipt,
Yeah.
right into the general
General
fund,
fund, yeah.
basically?
I'm
Okay,
assuming we'll do it like we do with the health insurance now at the end of the year. Basically, you basically do a general ledger transfer from the water department into the general fund.
got it, yep, makes sense.
What's it booked in now, miscellaneous
Sorry,
local
now I
receipt?
understand. It was an
What do you put in
expense
now?
to them.
Miscellaneous?
Revenue
Income
from water.
to
No, we,
Yeah,
hit
yeah,
into
separate
the,
account.
staff and the health insurance,
Join the crowd.
Yeah, likewise.
charge, take it out
What
of
about
that.
all those
But that's
other?
for the journal entry.
Yeah.
But for the revenue spreadsheet, it's expenses from water. Talking about two different,
Sorry, yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
I got you. I got the question, I got the answer.
Okay, the secondary operator you'd already covered before in our meeting in terms of having the added help to
Yes.
run the pump station.
Yep.
We're it's pretty light on staff numbers. in
Yes,
terms of
there's only
running it,
two of
right?
us,
It's
yeah.
two of you, yep. Are there any other questions related to the increased staff request?
Staffing, I gave you the requirements from Mass DEP for staffing requirements. That's, had Chris hand that over.
Okay.
So basically, we're required to have a secondary operator, and we haven't had one for 4 years now since John Hughes is gone.
So we're not in compliance technically, or?
Well, I've been able to use, one of the part-time officers has a water license, so I basically put him on, he's a town employee, so he's basically covering us for having that extra body, a licensed operator.
Right, to check the box anyway.
Yes,
Yeah.
so, it keeps us in compliance.
Okay.
But it also, having the extra employee allows us to do a lot more preventative maintenance out in the streets, like exercising valves, rebuilding hydrants. It makes it so we don't have to use another highway employee to do, any excavating, so.
Is it a part-time role?
No, it'd be a full-time
Full-time
employee.
role? Okay.
Yeah.
Is it common at all, probably not, for water employees to work in different water departments at all, or not? Can they not really?
No, you'd actually, the DEP does allow for, if you need an operator, you can, there's a form that you can fill out that you could request the services, to be able to have it as a backup. But that doesn't
not a
help you
paid
with your
employee.
day-to-day operations.
Right, gotcha.
Obviously, this would have to be something that would be added to the ASME contract as a new employee, so.
Are the facilities staffed at all hours?
No,
No.
no,
okay.
just during regular,
Just,
somebody is always there on the weekends, so I go in, when I can't do it, it leaves Lenny. But for most of the time, it's just me doing the wells on the weekends, so a couple hours, a day on the weekends, go in, write down some numbers, check the chemicals,
right.
make sure everything's looking good.
See staffs at all times, obviously, that wouldn't leave much room for life for you guys with,
Yeah,
you gotta pick and choose who gets to go outside. Any other questions on the expense line items?
For me, it's straightforward.
Pretty minor increases. Energy services up 2,500.
yeah, just based on the past year, so,
Okay.
And the benefits went up 25,000, am I reading that correctly?
Yep. you're reading it.
that's the increase for the new employee,
That's the new
health insurance
employee.
benefits, yeah.
That's a worst case, like the most expensive plan for a
His salary
family.
is 40 and change, right?
Worst
If I
case.
read that correctly? That's a big
It's
number for benefits, isn't it? I mean, if a
kinda
salary
what I
of
was thinking.
45.
That's like
Yeah.
the highest,
Yeah.
that's the most expensive family plan.
If they took the highest plan we offer.
Highest, the highest of the high plan with a family,
So that's a,
the
that's a-
biggest it could go.
quote, a safe number, if you will, there may be.
Placeholder.
Yeah,
Yeah, and for, health, dental, vision, it's if they go for the whole,
Well, the 25 is also the increase to both mine or Lenny's
yes,
health
that's,
current health insurance plans that
oh,
is
so
gonna
that
increase.
includes the health
The
insurance plan
8%,
for
yeah.
every, for
Yes.
every.
The
For all-
increase.
For everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that
Yeah.
makes more sense.
But the bulk of it is the
Yeah, I
the
would
single
say
new plan.
Another
20,000.
15 or so for the employee.
Yeah.
yeah, roughly 20,000 for
Nice.
the new employee,
Oh,
for the proposed new employee.
okay.
At some point, we should get an update maybe on like the health insurance options in another discussion, right?
We haven't gotten the
No, I
final
think he's
percentage.
Yeah.
Oh, the opt-out,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, those types of things, okay. The smaller item, the 4,600 that fell off, I guess this year, is that helping pay for Bill's excavator? The mini excavator, is that what that is?
That was our contribution to that we split with the highway and the cemetery department.
Got it, yep. And then the 35,000 for capital for this year for,
Yeah, that'll get
Got it.
moved into our capital reserve account.
yep.
Is that making those systems more secure, or are they just outdated? A lot of SCADA systems are,
So the SATA system
where they are.
uses telephone lines, copper telephone lines for communication, which we've been notified by Verizon that they're not going to service them anymore. So if they do go down, they'll give us the option of going to fiber optic, but not fix our copper lines anymore, which leaves us with no communications. I did get a price a few years back to update the system, which was around $50,000, but that didn't include, now that we're gonna have to go to a radio system with transmitters to be able to communicate. So it bumped us up a lot. And that'll be something that, you know, as long as you guys approve it, and it gets approved at town meeting, we would have to bid that out.
Thank you.
I misspoke, I said 35,000 for that, but that's 50,000, right, for SCADA?
It's more, the new proposal you should have there. Is that what you gave them there?
Yeah, so let me clarify. So the printout of the capital plan you have has Eric's original $50,000.
Okay.
But he's in the last couple of weeks provided us with this new proposal from Weston and Sampson that is a $150K. So that's not on your spreadsheet, but this new proposal for you to take home some wonderful light reading from Weston and Sampson shows what Eric just talked about in regards to the radio updates. So we had gotten this from him, Chris and I, about a week or two ago.
131, right?
Yeah,
131 and then
the 29, I think.
and
or something.
29. If you look, there's two attached together, David.
I got it, okay, thank you.
For a clean 150
Mm-hmm.
in that, or 26.5?
Yeah, so this will be paid from what would, and I was discussing it with Jackie today and Chris about probably the cleanest way to do this is we'll have a town meeting vote to transfer the money from our surplus into the capital reserve account.
That's the 35,000?
Yes, that's one that goes to 35,000 every year.
Yeah, right.
So if we move
That's
it,
just to plan for large expenditures, pipes.
that's for any, yeah, capital improvements that need to be done.
Yeah, right.
So, and I think, I feel that, you know, if we move it into our capital on the 5,800 line, it ends up, you see these spikes, and you'd see a spike of, you know, $150,000 for this year. So, but it's, you know, it all depends on how, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, as long as the money, you know, the money, we have the money in our surplus reserves, so.
So to Eric's point, as you're all familiar with the warrant article, moving the 35,000 aside every year into reserves to plan for the future. So what Eric's proposing, and he started to discuss with Chris and I today, was moving that 150,000 at the same time from his surplus to his capital reserve, so that he had the ability to spend those funds from his capital reserve in fiscal '21 for the entirety of the SCADA project.
How much is in reserves?
70,000 this year, it'll be
No, total, I think what you're about you're.
oh, my surplus account?
Yeah,
Sorry, I meant
surplus.
surplus.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, my bad.
I think it's somewhere around there, right?
Yeah, so,
350?
yeah.
Okay, so take about 2/3 of that?
Yeah, and I'll still
30.
have some reserves, and, you know, if, you know, for anything that comes up.
Right. What's the policy on reserves?
It would have to be a town meeting vote,
Surplus, Yeah,
to move that money. What we've done in the past, we had a well that went down, and, FinCom approved a emergency transfer to do our well repair, and then at town meeting, we reimburse the
got
the
it.
town back for that money.
Authorize it after
Yes.
the fact. But is there a minimum or maximum?
For the reserve account?
Yeah, yeah.
No.
And we tapped into that surplus account too, I think it was last year, to cover the water operating expense line due to the new services at Dodges Row. So that was either last year or the year before.
Yeah, to help offset that.
Yeah, so when we have new construction and they, you know, the water department fronts the money and then they get paid back the next year, it helps cover that as well.
So does the 150, sorry, this is, I should know this, the 150 proposal from Weston Sampson, the work that they're proposing to do, does that negate the 50,000 SCADA?
Yes.
So why is it so different? Is it,
Just over the last few years, as the equipment we have has become older, it's obsolete now. It can't even be upgraded anymore. Computer systems, I mean, we run on XP, but it's not an issue because we're not connected to the internet.
Right.
So it works fine for what we need it to do, for just communicating and keeping basically a data logger. So the new system will be, you know, obviously everything has to be upgraded. So each building, at the tank, at our office, and also the pump storage, they each have their own, basically, a control unit, and those all have to communicate, and all that data gets brought to the office where it's all kept on the computer, and you can control it all from there.
But why did we have, was 50,000 just a placeholder, or did
It
the
was an
scope of
earlier
the work?
quote.
That was a quote I got a few years back,
Oh,
but that didn't
gotcha.
include, now that we have to upgrade to radio system,
And the copper line removals, correct?
yeah.
And Weston Sampson just re-upped that proposal, they redid it. Was it Weston Sampson originally that was consulted for the?
They did the original installation, and they did the the proposal I had a few years back was with them too. Obviously, because of the price, it's definitely gonna have to be something that we have to bid, so.
So what do we get, like, what does it enable us to do that we can't do now? Like, where the current system works fine, I know it's outdated, it's antiquated technology, to say the least, but where it kind of gives you what you need, what is this?
Verizon is not gonna support the copper lines, so they communicate through modems, right now. And so once the copper lines are obsolete, which they told us by January or February, they would be obsolete, and they won't repair them anymore. So if we have a branch come down or a tree come down and takes a copper line down, we've lost all communications. So the well doesn't know what the tank level is, so it doesn't know when to come on and turn it off.
Right.
So these are all things that we're gonna run into as a problem.
Communication links that are integral to the whole
Yes.
thing.
Would that allow, was that an app? Would that allow to get the readings?
You'll also be able to control it from an app now. And the other thing too is with our chlorine that we add, it's a critical chemical, so it always has to be monitored, and that information always has to be, basically, if it goes up or to a certain point, it needs to be able to set an alarm off and notify you of that.
If we didn't kick this down the road, how much would this cost? Or will we still need to upgrade everything?
We still need to upgrade everything.
All right, so we technically save money by not doing it a few years ago?
Well, we would have had to spend the $50,000 just for the other part of the upgrade,
Yeah.
but that wouldn't include, now we'd be in the same boat of having to
Okay.
go to the radio system, because of the copper lines going away.
Still stock, we would have saved money technically by not?
It would have been the whole scope. The scope would have been a lot less.
Okay.
That's why it was around $50,000. Now the scope is a lot broader because of having to upgrade to a radio system.
Because the copper lines wouldn't have been included in that.
I think your point is, if we did that original, the
Yeah.
50,000, we would have been talking about redoing the copper lines with more money this year either way. It would have
What
been
about
2
fiber?
projects now instead of 1 project, because we waited.
What about fiber?
I was wondering the same.
They don't like to use the fiber lines, because I guess what happens with the way the fiber lines work and the way they switches data, I guess data gets lost. So that's why usually you would use either cellular or you use radio for these communications.
So these will be radio, like proprietary,
Yes,
Right.
we would have a radio,
not that you own the frequency, but
we would own the frequency.
you do?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'd have to apply for frequency, get the
Oh, yeah,
frequency.
I saw some of that in here. So it's 150,000 for the stuff, for the hardware and the installation.
Yes,
It's really niche design, right? You probably don't install one of these a day,
no.
right? Weston Sampson has their hands in every business. I
And
mean,
it's all computer programming, it's all, everything has to be
Right.
programmed and.
It's probably like $20,000 of hardware if you go to UDO Electronics or something to buy it, but we're not in a position to do that.
Well, they have to have an app for everything now, so somebody's gotta spend
That-
time on that.
Yeah, I know the software drivers, I mean, that's, the thing is, like, there'll be a host of challenges, I'm sure, with all this new stuff, right?
Yeah,
There always is, but.
and where it's being bid to, it may come in less than that, and I'm hoping it does come in less than that. This was a proposal, I asked them to put together a number for me,
Yeah.
so we had a budget number.
Okay, yeah, great.
Um,
But otherwise procurement and all that, right? So, okay.
Does this is my ignorance of this, but, does this monitor the lines throughout the community, the water lines actually?
Pressure, well, I mean, it monitors the pressure, constantly monitors the pressure.
Okay, but what I'm thinking about is the quality of the actual line itself. How do we monitor that?
Whenever we dig, or if we, a new service gets put in, or a new development,
Yeah,
when they cut into the line, we actually get a core sample out of it, and
and that'll tell you
we can look at that and say, you
the
know,
quality of the line and when it was installed and.
yeah, I mean, we can see what the condition is.
If it falls apart in your hands, it's not good.
I know, if there's a water leak, here's an issue.
Exactly. If it's a wood core, it's a bad
Yeah, yeah.
sign.
Oh, boy.
Okay. I guess, I don't know, I just was wondering, how many miles of lines do we have throughout the community and how?
Over
many-
26,
26 miles of lines.
yeah.
That's like our road miles, kind of, right? Isn't that
It is,
similar?
yeah, basically.
84, 89 road miles.
Oh, do we have that many?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just reading the annual report. That's all I do. Just stick in your brain.
Wealth of knowledge.
I'm gonna play a trivia game now.
Yeah, that'd be. I don't get to see real Jeopardy when we're at night meetings, but I could do Wenham Jeopardy really well.
Okay, so that number may change, and we would know when, if we, at some point, we'll be okaying these, right? This is in the spreadsheet, this is the capital request.
I think later tonight on your agenda.
Yeah, tonight,
Yeah.
but
Correct.
then this number might change at some point. We don't know
Well,
exactly.
I think we'll probably hope to ask you to plug the 150 for
Yeah.
tonight based on the new proposal.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any other questions on that, anyway. I meant to say, yeah, looking out to next year, generator,
Generator at the pump house.
yeah,
I may push that out another year,
okay.
because I wasn't expecting the
SCADA stuff,
SCADA to be as expensive.
right,
It's not failing, but it's one of those things that we need to make sure it doesn't fail. But I think I'd rather push out another year, give us another year to build up some more of our reserves before we do
Reserves,
spend
yeah.
the money on that.
yeah. That's proactive, and it's working, you test it, and maintain
Yes,
it and all
yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah, it's an older unit that, you know,
It's a big Kohler or?
it's an old, yeah, bus motor,
Big diesel,
gas.
Gas, is it?
Well,
Okay.
it's natural gas,
ah, interesting,
so.
interesting.
And is that computer controlled once if the power goes off? Is that?
It's just a regular switch, transfer switch. But I don't leave it in automatic anyways, because what I don't want to have happen is have it automatically kick on, and maybe something didn't kick on right.
Right.
So I want to make sure that my well, when it kicks on, that everything starts up correctly, chemical feeds start up correctly and stuff, so.
How powerful are the pumps, like in horsepower rating, or?
One of our wells, we can pump about 650 gallons a minute, and the other one, we pump about 225 gallons a minute.
Okay. At the head, for the town, whatever the head height is, going up to the,
Yeah, it doesn't change a lot, but yeah,
Cool.
depending on demand too, so.
right. Good stuff. Any other? Nope. Questions for Eric?
We're good.
Thank you very much for coming and for giving us
Welcome.
good, clean drinking water.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Going to, okay, so this is an interesting line item, so, or agenda item, potential vote for audit committee designee. So the audit committee consists of 3 members, right? I served on it for, I don't even know the terms, how they really work. Do you know, Catherine? Are they
It's a yearly
a year term? So I was on it for a couple of years. Opened it up to others to see if I could pass the baton. There was so much interest that I had to keep everybody back. In the meantime, we had a resident, so we have, it's typically a FinCom, select board member, chairs historically, I think, from what I understand.
A chair or the designee.
Chair or designee, and an at-large or community member. We had an opening that has been, I'll say, temporarily fit, or has been filled, subject to the appointment by the Board of Selectmen, who has appointed this community member, who, yep,
You can add
Yep.
this to me.
and Chris has given me information on Marty, who seems like a very capable, well-suited, qualified candidate to serve on the audit
Alex,
committee.
is this what you handed back to me? Did you?
Why would I hand that back to you?
I don't know. You did. You said this is for you, and I said okay. So I think that's yours.
Thank you very much. You saved me, Jackie.
You know, I just love to wade through the piles of paper.
I probably have it in here somewhere too. Marty Croyle is a CPA and partner at Stowe and Deegan LLC, CPA and accountants, accounting firm. So the question at hand, the reason why we're talking about this is because this individual would serve based on, as the FinCom designee. So I think the question before us is, provided we're comfortable, which I personally am, with Marty's contribution, I appreciate that, to the town's audit committee, we would ask that at their convenience, that the select board just change their vote perhaps to appointment as the FinCom designee. I think before our meeting, that's what we arrived at as a clean way of doing this. Alternatively, the FinCom could vote at this point in time to do so as designee, but this person's already been appointed to the audit committee, so that seems a little past. I don't know if there are any, and Catherine, you're here, I welcome your take on it, whatever you think is.
I'm a little lost, to tell you the truth.
So I think it boils down to the
Are there
the
three
charge.
people who presently have?
We
I
have
know
three
there's Marty,
people.
And I know we have Jack.
Rick Jones.
Oh, Jones, okay.
Yes.
Forgetting that. So.
Chris Jones, right? Oh, Rich Jones, thank you, yes, yep.
Yeah, I forgot about Rich Jones, so, yeah,
And I believe the select board did appoint Marty.
definitely.
Okay, so we're good on this end. The question is, based on the charge, do we need to take further action to sanction, for lack of a better term, Marty's role as FinCom designee?
I read this as we need to appoint him as our designee, formally.
So let's just do so then. We can establish a motion, discuss and vote on that, to your point, to respond to the order of the charge. The point I was trying to make is that, no, it's okay. This is a little convoluted, I realize, is that he's already been appointed by the select
Yes.
board. So
So
we're
we
not,
would be
we're not
like dotting an I
usurping,
and
we're not, we're
crossing
just,
an
I think
order.
we're
Order of
checking a box.
operations.
It was a little, it wasn't realized when they appointed him that one of the members was supposed to be an audit committee of FinCom, so that was just a little oversight when the appointment was made.
No
And
problem.
then Catherine brought the charge to our attention at the audit committee when it was happened, that's when we realized that,
I think
someone
a
from the
simple
audit
vote
committee.
of the
Simple,
FinCom to
in
just.
support
to
of
just
the
support
appointment as
Marty
FinCom
Croyle as
designee.
FinCom's representative to the
That-
audit committee.
Totally agree. So I'll establish the motion that FinCom support the appointment by the Wenham Board of Selectmen of Marty Croyle to the Wenham Audit Committee, furthermore, as the designee from FinCom.
Second the motion.
Great. Any other questions, thoughts? Yes, Jim?
I can't recall this. Does the audit committee come to the finance committee at some point to give us an update or an actual copy of the, how does that? I
So
can't-
so for example, when I was on the audit committee, I would, like if, for example, Jack couldn't make a meeting,
Yeah.
I would update the select board with a memo and an appearance at a meeting, you know, it's pretty.
Jack is scheduled on the agenda for the 11th.
Okay.
To update the Board of Selectmen as the representative for the audit committee,
Right. And
the FY19 audit.
I think Marty could update us at a meeting as well
So
after the
that's
audit.
kind
Yeah,
of where, that's where I.
Twice a year.
where I was going with that, yeah, just to give us. some-
exactly.
yeah,
So I'll reach out to Marty and
Okay.
ask if he'd be willing to do so. I suspect he will.
Mhm.
Good question. Okay,
And as it relate to the financials, Parlin Sullivan, we're still waiting on the final draft that's been approved. They'll send out PDF, and I can forward you off a copy of the PDF when we get it, or if you want a hard copy, we can print out a hard copy
of the report.
of the financial statements.
Yeah, so what will be in the selectmen's packet this week is the draft. He's gotta send over the final version. So once we get the final version, everybody will get a copy of that.
Okay. This would be as of FY 19, is that
19,
right? Yeah,
19.
okay.
So they're certifying the past year's financial
Financial
condition, statement of operations.
Mm-hmm. Management
uh,
discussion and analysis.
Discussion, how we operated the finance department and control.
Yes.
Precisely. Deficiencies, if any, are found.
Okay, okay.
Impact of changes for like GASB
Yeah.
74.
Do they make recommendations about future typically?
Jim Powers would come to this committee if you wanted to.
He absolutely would, yeah.
So if,
It would be nice.
yeah,
The selectmen would like to get him.
He volunteered and Jack declined it.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think Marty would be, I mean,
The committee would
a
deliberate
great
on that.
contributor here, given his background and everything.
I absolutely agree, yeah, and I'm appreciative of his,
It's great that he's
stepping up.
forward.
So with that said, going to vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Marty.
Articles that occur annually.
Mr. Chairman, did you skip over 3?
I think we did discuss
Yes.
capital budget.
I'm sorry.
The spreadsheet? I did, thank you for calling me back to it, yep. Okay, so the biggie, we've all got the capital on the nice legal pages, or even bigger than legal, just really nice. So we're gonna go through and, Board of Selectmen has already filled out kind of expressed their support. Did the select board vote on these? Take a vote, or just
On every
temperature check?
individual item.
They voted? Okay.
There's a couple of deferments where they're going to get more information and make a future decision.
Yep.
Those are indicated on here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we can just plow through these. Any thoughts as to structure? Should we just take them one at a time? Just move right on through?
Sure, one
Oh.
at a time.
Here we go. Yeah, we won't do all. All right, front end loader. This is the existing lease. I think we're probably all in support of this. This is something we already own, we just gotta pay for it. We gotta pay our bills here. So I'll establish a motion that FinCom approve the front end loader lease, second year of a 5-year lease.
Do you want to do them as a whole?
You could do a whole
Yeah, you
department
Yeah.
if it's easier.
Yeah,
at the end.
Let's do that, yep.
I just thought-
No, that's a much more efficient way, David, thank you. So,
Or you could, to Anthony's point, you could yes, no your whole way down and then make a final vote to like affirm those.
beautiful, yep, okay. Wrap it up with, at the end, of
Yeah,
each
do one
department.
motion for the whole kit and caboodle.
Or the whole page, yeah, in
Mhm.
fact, yeah, both pages.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Show of support for front end loader, then? Yay, nay?
Yes.
Yep, across the board, okay. Putting in a yes. Backhoe, I personally am in favor of.
That was highest priority, wasn't it?
It's been his priority for some time. I mean, there have been lots of other high priority discussions like
Right, but
leaf,
I remember
which
he really
isn't,
emphasized that at his,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Bill's personal preference.
right. Road capital at 85,000, I think changed a little bit, it was like, didn't we, from 90 or something?
What happened with that was, we didn't realize, we had the leaf pickup backed out of there originally, the 40,000. So it was 45 before, not realizing that the leaf pickup was backed out of his budget last year.
Yeah,
So by that, we were double taken out, so we put it back into it, I would guess, so it went back up to 85.
to 85.
Oh.
Last year was 45.
No, last year was 80.
80, thank you. Okay. We gotta maintain our roads. I support the 85, so in
Yep.
favor of that.
Who's gonna say no to the state giving us the
Oh, the state,
chapter 90 money?
Yeah, exactly, yeah, we'll take the state's money, what little we get, and 150,000 in road capital. I'm also in support of it, I don't know if anyone has any questions or thoughts on that. I'll show support there. likewise?
All in favor?
In favor? Okay, great. Don't have to be. All right, so those are yeses in the DPW columns. On to facilities. Council on Aging roof replacement for the failing roof. We punted on this last year, of course.
Yeah, we deferred that from
Yeah.
last year.
Yep, if,
That's
at least for
falling
1
apart.
year.
I
Yeah,
think
it's in tough
been
shape.
a couple years, I think that's.
Yeah,
what
it's
it
been on there.
Leaks.
Okay.
This is the second or third year.
Yep, I support that.
Yep.
Master plan, which Anthony has described the potential benefits of, and, you know, long-term vision for the town. I think it'll help tell us how we need to respond at certain times, and also kind of get lots of different boards, committees, employees, residents all on the same page in many respects. It comes at a steep cost. I'm hard pressed in this current fiscal year to say yes to it outright. So I don't know. Deferred to me means not no, not yes. It means a maybe. It means maybe subject to other discussions later. I don't know if the intent here is to suggest we are getting together with select board. I guess I'm kind of at a deferral stage with that, is my current thinking. And I expect there to be discussion about all of these. I'm not, DPW was easy. There's gonna be some biggies in here that'll probably be several minutes of discussion, so this could very well be one, and I'll step back, as Julie would say, for other thoughts.
So I have a, well, I'm sorry, go.
Go ahead.
So, I guess in my decision-making or thinking about this is to what extent would the master plan map out economic development options? And you know, my understanding or thinking is it would be a fair amount, as well as other land use issues, but economic development is part of it. And given the nature of our, you know, extreme demand and increasing pressures on our revenues, I'm leaning toward doing a master plan, if that's 1 year closer to us getting a plan for some economic development that takes years to unfold and get up and running anyway. So I guess.
It's easier to do by itself, to do a master plan, than to.
Right, and then to implement any recommendations for economic development takes more years. So that's the primary reason I'm leaning toward a yes. It is $100,000. What are the other big land use issues? I mean, and we're pulling to, how much, okay, so I have a few questions at once. And then would this master plan would pull together a lot of the work that's already been done, like on the open space and recreation plan, the economic development report, did the economic development group generate like some recommendations or any ideas?
They had a charge. I can't say that they came up with a plan based on their charge. Their charge still exists. But we do have a current and active open space and recreation plan, a current and active affordable housing trust action plan, and then we have the Wenham Connects Age and Dementia Friendly Action Plan, all three which are currently in implementation stage at this time.
And those would be rolled up into the master plan?
They would. There would be some cost savings for the town. I've been talking with Margaret Hoffman, our planning coordinator, who's been doing the quotes for all of this for us. And there will be some cost savings on the master plan for those items. As we talked about a couple weeks ago, I believe it was the evening we were at the COA, there's not a lot of grant funding opportunity to get master plans. It's just not something that, you know, a lot of people fund with grants. There's not a lot of opportunities out there for it. And further, it's not something you can actually use CPA money for, because that was an avenue we explored as well. And we actually have a lot of missed opportunities on grants. So I think, Carrie, your point to economic development being a really long-term process is really good, but I think there's also more short-term grant opportunities that we could miss out on if we continue to not look at our long-range planning from, you know, it not just land use, housing, land use, economic development, financial planning, capital planning. There's a lot of that going on in the master plan, and there's short-term grant opportunities we're missing out on by not having that document.
So just as an example of that, just say Boulder Lane was somehow gonna be developed and we wanted to apply for a MassWorks grant, you can't check off that box. And a lot of communities can, so they're gonna pass our,
Because
our
to
application.
qualify, you have to have a master plan.
It gives you more points
For MassWorks,
for MassWorks grant.
which is what would that,
It could be road improvements, it could be traffic light signalization there. It
Infrastructure.
could be connection to, we have that connection to sewer though, but if we were to connect that area to, say, Beverly Water and Sewer, you know, we could possibly do something there jointly. It's regional, it's a nice story when you're working together with another community, but it's just
Okay.
one less
Yeah.
box that we check, and it's a pretty important box.
Do you have any kind of ballpark, return on investment? You invest in the master plan and what you may reap back over 15 or 20 years for that 100,000?
Well, if you identify areas of economic development, and all of a sudden we're increasing what this community needs is their tax base, then it could be enormous. By not doing it, we know we're not gonna do anything, or it's very difficult.
well, I think, put another way, to what extent does, because I think you're asking the right question, like, what does it get you? And I would argue, it probably has the potential to get you a lot of things, with some unknowns as to what those are, when they arrive, what they cost, and the practicality of being able to implement what those are, depending upon where we are fiscally at that time. And I would say, the flip side might be, to what extent does not having a master plan, and I think Anthony was just getting at this, preclude us from realizing some of those economic development opportunities. And I would say, I have my personal senses on that point somewhat limited in terms of its negative impact, only because of the nature of the community and the relatively infrequent opportunities that arise, which suggests that, one, we could be caught flat-footed, because we might not have the stuff in place and the understanding and the structure in place to respond appropriately. On the other hand, because we're so fiscally constrained, we need to just be nimble and tactical when those do arise anyway, and rely upon those communities and boards such as open space and resident forums and all the town employees and like the Boulder Lane is a perfect one. I think lots of people would like to say, oh yeah, like envision it coming on board or available. The door's open and we can kind of pursue a vision for it starting tomorrow. And it's all hands on deck. But the reality is those things take years to materialize. Even in very, pro kind of supportive of economic development areas, which I totally am.
I was on the planning group that walked the Boulder Lane property, and the complications there would take time because of the connections with Beverly and access to that property.
The ledge and all that stuff.
The land itself and the access. But what I was gonna suggest, I was gonna talk about economic development. Maybe an interim step in this, if we wanna defer this, is to, I don't know, if reactivate is the right word, but the Economic Development Committee, recharge the Economic Development Committee to kind of move forward on and rethink their agenda and their charge and move it along. Is that possible?
May I speak to the Economic Development Committee? It's a little before Anthony's time. I think the challenge, Jim, to your point in terms of recharging the Economic Development Committee
Yeah.
is that while there was a lot of good ideas,
Yeah.
I think there was a lack of understanding of what the community as a whole wanted to see from economic development.
Yeah.
So I think there were folks on that committee, and I worked with them a little bit, as did Margaret Hoffman, about what their goals were. They did have some charge items, one of which was a cell tower. We will have on the selectmen's agenda this coming week, the proposal that we're gonna put out an RFP for a cell tower over at the Iron Rail. So there's items that were on that charge that are still getting worked upon, but they're, an RFP has become more of a staff project rather than that committee. But I think the biggest challenge with that group is that there was no kind of reading of the community of what people wanted to see. They had a lot of ideas, but it's hard to gain traction without knowing what the community's looking for. And I will say, based on conversations I've had with Margaret, as we've looked at different firms and different quotes for master planning, the largest expense of the master planning process is community outreach. The charrettes, the forums, pulling in, we have this open space plan. They're getting a lot of their action items done, but it's in a silo. The Affordable Housing Trust is trying to identify what items they're gonna be working on, but then again, working in a silo. Wenham Connect's very similarly focused on age and dementia-friendly initiatives, aging in place, but again, in a silo. So I think where we are right now, there's some cost savings available to us to pursuing a master plan sooner rather than later because we already have these other planning activities done. We also have this momentum right now with these groups that are actually implementing the plans. They're not sitting on a shelf, and we want to keep that momentum going as well as get the cost savings from those plans already being done. So I think, Margaret and I have had a conversation. It's always been something we've talked about since she started a few years ago, and Peter Lombardi. I know we talked about it last year, and there was a crack of lightning that I want to remind you that happened when you guys brought it up. So just want to remind you that that lightning's still there. I think there's momentum here. I think we're at a moment where we could really hear from the community. Carrie gave me the honor of being on a panel with the Mothers Club a few weeks ago, and that was something that group was very interested in as well. They're not a group that can always come in and be at a lot of meetings and be on a board, but they really want to have a way to provide feedback to the community because they want to make their home here for the next couple of decades. And I think there could be a lot of community support for doing the master plan and keeping up with that momentum. But I would also say too that if you would consider deferring it to when you meet with the Board of Selectmen jointly, I know that the Affordable Housing Trust as well as the Conservation Commission and the Open Space are all discussing their recommendation of the master plan at their upcoming meetings. So if that's something you'd like to hear from the various land use boards about this as well, instead of just from staff, I know all of those boards have it on their upcoming agendas, if you wanted to discuss it with that information as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
Of course.
that's helpful. Thoughts or questions before we take a temp check?
No, if you want to vote. you just
I-
vote if you-
I guess I'm, I don't know, I'm not trying to lead this here. I'm in favor of deferral, so that's where my hand is. And please indicate where you are as committee members as to yes, no, or deferral. I think are 3 options for each of these.
So, just for me, I'm leaning, everything you say is right, Jackie, it's just where we are now financially, and it's $100,000, so I'd probably defer till later till we hear from everyone else. But I think it's, I'll just stop at that, I don't want to
Okay.
hear myself talk, I'll just leave it at that.
That's, I think what we're doing is we're deferring the discussion to
Yeah.
with the Board of Selectmen. Of course, if you're leaning yes, you can indicate yes. I mean,
I'm looking for something else to cut to find $100,000.
I don't know how much room there's, I mean, I think
Right,
we, one thing we're not doing is, I'm not setting enough big picture context this evening with the extreme hit that we're taking this year with massive overrides on the table.
Yep.
Uh,
I would support deferring it, but hopefully the Economic Development Committee can maybe push ahead.
So we're deferring on voting on it, or we're deferring this item until FY '22?
So the selectmen voted to defer on voting on it. That's
Okay.
their deferral.
Right.
Deferring.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Is there an, I'm sorry to interrupt, is there an expectation that we're then getting together with the Board of Selectmen, right, to discuss these further?
Yeah,
So we're
definitely.
deferring the discussion as to, we're deferring the vote on it, to your
We're
point.
deferring the vote,
Yeah,
that's fine, I can support that.
Defer.
okay, thanks. But I think it is helpful because with,
No.
oh, sorry,
I'm voting yes.
you're voting yes, okay, so we have, so we have support holistically for the whole initiative as to finding a source of funding for it this year. We have some support and some discussion deferral recommendations. Okay. I am going to write down, however, I think deferred for the time being. Is that where we're at?
No, I mean, you got 4 to 1.
That's why I'm writing deferred.
Right.
Exactly,
You got it.
I'm indicating that for those
Yep,
watching at home.
That's right.
Yep,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much, Mike.
That's it.
And then,
And can I just ask, Mike,
yes.
do you, and it's just because you
Well,
think,
no, because, we'll just do it again at the selectmen meeting. I've been involved in a lot of master plans and strategic planning in my career. And it all means different things to many people, obviously. So part of the only, we're in a situation, and I'm agreeing with Alex that we can't afford it, but we're in a situation where we're reacting. That's all we're doing, is reacting from year to year and, working on the crisis. The part of this is, when I look at a master plan, I look at, they tend to be words. Yeah, I do want to create more revenue, okay, but where's the implementation of that? So that also should include that. And the only way it works, a master plan works, and I'll use that word, master plan, because everyone's familiar with that, is A, it has an implementation part of it, and B, leadership agrees to use it, follow it, and implement it. Okay, so many times we've had, or I've seen, here's a great plan, isn't this great and wonderful? And then it goes on the shelf. Okay, so if leadership doesn't use it, then why spend the money? It is a waste of money. So, but we do need something, and I think we need it sooner rather than later, and that was why I was voting yes. Where we afford it, that's the hard part. I'm in the same quandary you are, Alex.
Yeah, we all are.
We can't afford it, but pay me now or pay me later. I mean, you need something. We need to come up with something sooner rather than later. But that's why I was voting yes. Okay.
That's a great, I think that's a great point, and I think it should be introduced again in our joint meeting with the BOS.
I mean, it's no reflection on the administration or the town. I mean, you guys do great work, but these last couple of years have been pretty rough. So, and it, not necessarily, and I know there's other dynamics. There's a whole set of dynamics that's going on right now in a
Right.
different meeting.
Right,
So-
yeah, good point.
And that's gotta be part of that too. And that's the hard one.
Yep. Yeah, you raise a lot of good points.
So, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Anthony, do you want to tee up the next one, the compensation and classification study for $15,000? Or Chris, or Jackie?
Let Jackie go through the last history of it, because I think the last one was, what, 5 years ago, Jackie?
Yeah, actually, I
recall that.
came on board in 2015, and I helped the Collins Center finish the last one. So the data from our current comp and class study from the Collins Center is 2014 and 2015 data in a schedule that was then accepted by the Board of Selectmen a couple months into 2016. So while it is a 2016 adoption, the data is actually getting older than you'd want data for your salaries to be.
What's the 15 for? Somebody doing a classification study?
Yeah.
Consultant, right?
Consultant to do it.
Yep, yep.
Can I ask a different question? Why? Can't we do our own research and look at comparables and write up your own classification study?
I think if we had more staff, that we probably could target that, but when considering there's only 7 people in town hall, with me being 1 and my executive assistant being 2, and here's 3, 4, that it just becomes, it's a lot of chasing around, plus it's a lot of looking at job descriptions, and it's having that professional HR consultant come in and evaluate them, and then it gets us ready for the next round of collective bargaining. So when the unions come with, what they want, we can say, we've looked at comparable communities, and here's what the results are, and this is where we currently fall, and it just gives us a little.
Is it just for one position?
No, it would be for all
Oh,
positions.
for all?
For all positions in town hall,
All positions in town.
in town,
Excluding the schools.
Excluding the schools.
Excluding.
So town,
Excluded.
fire, police.
Fire,
like that.
police,
Okay.
library.
And that's 50 employees, 45 employees?
50 full-time plus a wide variety of part-time roles.
And it does cut across different professional disciplines and
And the
expertise and so.
2015 study, I want to clarify, was the job descriptions and the wage and classification schedule and job descriptions for just our 14 at the time non-union roles. So that's just like majority of them are department heads or clerical part-time, planning, finance,
Non-union.
the chiefs, the deputy chief and captain, the management and secretarial, clerical, day-to-day. So this study that Anthony's proposing would also include all of those collective bargaining agreement areas, as well as the library, which is a challenging one in and of itself. Their current matrix is, you need an abacus and a lot of time to, understand the library matrix. It's a very convoluted, for lack of a better word. So to get that cleaned up would be a huge benefit to both Hamilton and Wenham.
Is our turnover with all of our employees average compared to other areas around here? Higher, lower?
Usually turnover rates around 8 to 11% from last I remember reading for companies. So we might be a little skewed, because if one person leaves in town hall.
But more than just town hall though, like everyone that this would cover.
Okay. Well, that's a good
Because
question.
in addition to the bargaining, it's also just, what should we set the salaries at? Are the salaries competitive? And if they're not, are we losing a lot of people because of it?
I would assume we are.
Well,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
for instance, we advertised for the treasurer collector, and we only had 11 applications. In comparing other communities and speaking to the other managers, it was because we were relatively low. So,
So it's not even, are people leaving, it's just they're not even coming?
Well, we very small community, and in lean town hall, not a lot of employees, small network of dedicated, hardworking professionals that keep the town going. And
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
so, it's tough to look at like average, numbers and apply, because we had, turnover in the finance department, of course, for reasons that may or may not, it always comes down to salary, in part at least, but not exclusively. And I appreciate the efforts of department heads to do this sort of salary analysis to see if we're commensurate with the role, right, relative to neighboring communities and so on a micro basis, as has been done. Like Jim Reynolds, for example, right, had like underpaid staff, that we sought to correct, and that's kind of the easier one, because they're, the net impact may not be as large to the overall budget, so it's just easier to look at versus just, some of the larger number roles within town, which, to Anthony's point, we may not attract lots of people because they can go to a bigger city and make more money, but that's probably not gonna change overnight, and maybe it's not our intent to, I don't know, but.
Just the hard part of it is, we can't afford it. We're back to, everyone knows, I could probably look to you, Anthony, and ask, if you raise that salary, you could be competitive and you'd probably get folks.
Well, and that.
But we can't.
That's true, but that also assumes that it shows that you're off, that a study
True.
reports back that, you're off the mark by 30% here.
Yep.
I mean, it could just confirm you're in the range where you should be, which I don't mean to sound like cavalier, but usually you're in like this equilibrium of in the range, or you have very unhappy people who leave to get something that their market rate would command somewhere else. But I do think that, like, looking at the roles specific to the town and the limited employees that we have, and making sure that the roles are right, because sometimes, like, we've got such a unique, special town and great individuals, associates in town hall, that, like, making sure they're doing the right things probably. I don't know if this would do that or not, or if we just say, this is your role based on title, and over in these towns, these titles have this pay versus yours. It's almost like we could maybe even do more with it. But that isn't, I'm kind of going off topic, because
No, that's a good point.
I'm not-
Does it look at functions too?
Yeah.
Is that part of it? I mean, beyond, so
It's kind of what I'm getting at, yeah.
job description is different.
Well,
This is more kind of
For our non-union folks, our job descriptions were significantly overhauled during the last one for the non-union folks.
In the Collins study, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously there has been turnover in a lot of those positions since then, and that's something we'd wanna like look to adjust for. But we're going into it, I think, with a lot better shape than we went into the 2015 one. But I think, to Anthony's point, we've got a collective bargaining coming up. I think having it for that particular, any information you can have going into that negotiation process can really help inform those negotiations. And I think, as we learned with the schools negotiations last year, a significant amount of their increase this year is coming from the results of the contract negotiations that were finished last year. Not saying anything for or against how those went, just saying that those negotiations are always going to lead to consequences in the next few fiscal years. So being able to go into those informed in a way to keep, the town and the employees, on respectable terms, and have that information from a third party rather than just from, management or labor, having that third party, non-biased can be really helpful in those negotiations.
I have just two quick questions. Is the 15,000 cost for this, is that kind of an average? How do we arrive at the 15,000? And the second question I have is, would that include turnover? Because turnover has a fairly significant cost to any business or any entity. If you have X turnover and retraining and so on, would they include that in a study like this? Because that could pay for itself almost, if we reduce turnover.
True.
Well, I think this would make sure that you're in the range that doesn't result in turnover for reasons that you're in the wrong salary. But I don't know that they would, I don't know how it would address turnover otherwise.
Are you saying, Jim, that it would be cost saving in that we would be going, when we do have to go out to the market due to turnover and we're having to increase costs without this information?
Or even look historically, where is our turnover and how much does it cost when we have to retrain every employee that we turn over? That's and would a study like this reduce those turnover, retraining, reorientation costs? I don't know.
The cost is just, and when we speak to other communities on what they pay, so that's just an estimate, based on, like I said, other past communities. As far as the turnover, I think, like Alex said, I don't know if it's gonna do that, but it may identify why they're leaving, because the rates just low.
Aren't competitive.
Spot trends in advance or in arrears or whatever, yeah.
All right.
So just to keep us moving, because it's, we're getting there, in some ways, but not in others, and it is 15,000. I'm inclined to defer it because of the need to be vigilant in this year, and with apologies to Town Hall for, 2 items having, at least from my perspective, not jumping to the top of, yes, only from my perspective, we need to fund it, with urgency. And I think we need to be equally vigilant with those that are before us. That's where I'm at. I'll open up to others.
I would vote yes to move forward with it.
Okay,
I would too.
okay. Indications from Mike and Carrie?
I'm fine deferring the vote, but not,
That's what it was my sort of,
Okay, so that's
Mike, what did you
deferred.
say?
he hasn't yet.
Oh, you haven't yet, okay.
Defer.
Or you wish to defer it?
Defer.
Okay,
Oh.
defer,
3 to 2.
in favor of deferring is what? Is 3 to 2, as Jim said, so right, deferred. To be discussed again, which brings us to fire department.
It's pretty straight.
Well, we gotta pay for that pumper truck that's 2000, I forget, I remember.
16?
Chief, yeah, 6, yeah, all right. So we're still paying for that, one more year, and it's ours. I assume that we all wanna
Yep.
show support for paying that bill.
Yep.
Great, and then, protective gear, 30,000 in support of, along with, SCBA.
Yep.
We're good there? Keep everybody safe, yes, yes, yes. Well, that felt good. Not nice. And then that brings us to
I have 10
ambulance.
questions.
Yeah, I know.
I have one question, ambulance, that's
Yep.
the new one, that's not the new second one they want, right? That's the-
That is the backup ambulance, yeah, the second one, yeah.
So this
yeah.
is the second one.
That's the request for the second one,
Did
yes.
we ever get any kind of cost benefit on that?
Anthony did follow up with some stuff on used ambulances in the market. Oh, no,
Yes.
that was used fire trucks.
Use
Sorry, we did-
advisory,
yeah.
but actually, I'll give you an update just on what they're doing right now. So, there's a company in, Emergency One, I think they're in Attleboro, and there's a used ambulance there. So, the chief and the deputy chief went down there to take a look at it, and they were looking for 17, they would take 15, and it basically looks very similar to the one that's no good anymore. So they may wanna have some discussions about possibly looking at somehow getting that, if that was an option. We can get 7,000 from the insurance company, but that goes in the general fund. I don't know if there's any other way. I asked if the chief had any room in his operating budget, that maybe he could defer something that he hasn't purchased this year as a capital project and maybe relook at if that's
Right.
something that the town wants to do, but they're still looking.
Oh, in terms, I thought there were gonna be estimates of if it's gonna be generate income, having a second ambulance.
I've asked them for that, and
That would
I
be-
haven't received anything on that yet.
Yeah, whatever we've had, we've already sent to everybody.
With those discussions did come, I've talked to Jeff and the chief about that and asked them to get the information that you, and, I don't know if they're still working on it, but I, haven't received anything.
Did it seem like something they could guesstimate, they could get, or is it too
They
hard to
said-
even figure
they-
out, so we shouldn't expect anything?
They said they can, but I think it would be really rough. It would just be, their estimates are just gonna be like how many multiple car accidents, how many multiple car accidents there were, then they say, okay, if there were, 30 multiple car accidents, there's a potential 30 more rides right there. So that's what their estimates would be based on.
And they did say too, sorry, excuse me, they did say too, and they hadn't said that they got these either, they were gonna reach out to municipalities that already had a backup ambulance or a second vehicle, to see what kind of numbers they're generating, but I haven't gotten any of
I
that
have not.
either, just to see if they, if we could borrow numbers
Yeah.
from another community that.
If they're too close, then we would dilute it. But, no, for
Yeah.
me, that would help me make a decision.
I think that's what we put on the table the other day.
Can we get something cheaper? Or
So-
wait,
well,
well, I think
cheaper or
the
data-
question is how do we
data.
quantify it?
Yeah.
The opportunity cost, the lost revenue,
Lost
revenue
revenue.
loss from this kind of nebulous, like, not having the second backup when it's needed, because we're still establishing data, or,
Right.
right, with every day, unfortunately, but as they help people with this ambulance, there's a cost associated with it, so we got another day, we got more track record. And I think that the story really needs to be told with those numbers,
Yeah.
to show how this is helping the town with real money going into the general fund. And that, as consumers and spenders of money for all the public services and good, town services, schools, et cetera, when you see that ambulance, it's doing good in a couple different ways. One of them is from a, monetary side. Well, the case needs to be really crystal clear as to what, in my view, as to what we're missing out on.
I would agree.
And yes, there is the risk that it goes down, right, out of service for one reason or another, and then we're kind of really in a tough spot, which we were just in. And I think we would have looked at, and I'm sure that Chief Stevens and the BOS and everybody did consider early on, like, well, this is one ambulance that we're gonna start with, and then at some point it's logical to add a second one, but in my view, we need to firm up that story so that the numbers speak for themselves, I guess.
So can we defer this till the data? Or is this?
Yeah,
yes,
so,
no right now?
thanks for cutting to the chase.
Yes.
I would actually say an outright no, with acknowledgement of huge support of this program, to a new big dollar ambulance, from my standpoint, versus deferral. When I say outright, I'm not like, it's not with a gavel, it's just versus deferral. That said, what's that?
I don't understand what
What I'm saying is, if there's, with the late breaking news, if there's a cheapo on the block for 10 grand or whatever, and they want to come back and talk about that, then I'd be happy to defer to the discussion with the select board. If it was as presented, 31,000 for year 1 of 4, I'd say no. That would be my opinion at this stage versus deferring.
In that 31,000 is just the year 1, it does go down in year 3 and 4, that, I think it was initial 6,000 or
For
so.
lettering and everything.
For just to
Outfitting and all that,
Get
yeah.
up and running.
Yeah, thank
So
you,
the-
thank
the
you.
final,
Yes.
the final 3 years, I believe, would only be 24,000.
Got it.
We're talking
Talking 100 grand.
almost $100,000.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's still, I just
Big
wanted to,
picture.
it's
Yeah.
not gonna be this 31,000 for all 4 years, it's gonna drop down to 24,000.
Got it.
But I think we're working against ourselves by having this $31,000 in here. In the sense that, we've had this discussion, they're talking about that jumps out at me, say, a backup ambulance for $100,000 over 3 years, I mean, that's a lot of money. We really should be talking about what are the options. Do we have a $17,000 or $15,000 ambulance, and that we can buy a $6,000 or $7,000 insurance? That, if that number was in there at $7,000 or $8,000, that'd be a different kind of consideration, that's all I'm suggesting. You know, and then having numbers and data to say, we're gonna miss 35, the best estimate is we're gonna miss 35 runs, which equates to $90,000, $3,000 a run, or $1,000 a run, or something like that. I'm making these numbers up, but that's what we need to
The issue
have.
with the used ambulance now is, I'm pretty sure the company wouldn't hold it until July 1st. So if it was something that there was interest in by the town, then we'd have to find a way to procure it now, because they're not gonna hold it if somebody else gets it.
I suspect
But we
that.
could just, if you wanted to earmark, change that to 15,000 and have them look for used at the time after July 1st, that could.
I would support deferring the conversation at this point, as opposed to a yes or a no. That's my thought. And have the,
I'm in support of that, contingent upon new information at time of discussion,
yeah. I thought
which
that, yeah.
is along the lines of a vehicle to go after. I mean, the timing of it from a fiscal year standpoint, like, yeah, if they can scrape together, if they can kind of pinch from current year, could they do that? Is that what you're saying? Basically, you get somebody from insurance and you,
Well, it may have to be a reserve fund transfer, potentially.
yeah, so,
Yeah,
I don't
and then
know.
the insurance claim would fall to free cash and we'd make it back and.
are we getting that insurance claim regardless? Why is that contingent, sorry?
As soon as we're ready to release that ambulance, they'll give us the check.
Why are we hanging on to it?
Because there was options, it was to replace the motor,
Oh,
get the
right, of
box
course,
off, and
yes.
put that on a new cabin chassis,
Yeah,
and
but at this stage, we're not gonna do that, right? So were they thinking, is there any other reason why they're holding on to it, or?
no,
just-
probably at this point, I think it's releasing it as probably.
Okay.
Because all those options were fairly pricey.
They were fairly pricey, yeah, they were.
No, yeah, no. And
It was
then
still-
they were you didn't know how much, because it's like anything, once you start looking at one thing, you could find more problems, and it could just keep,
Kind of escalates up or
Yeah.
down in terms of cost.
exactly.
Right,
Yeah, so,
okay, so,
Like our cars.
like our,
is there, support for this discussion? Should we get new information at time of, joint meeting with select board, which, by the way, is, I think we're looking at the 13th, is that right? Or no?
Look at the calendar.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday, so you have a meeting on the Wednesday?
FinCom
we were
solo
talking-
on the 12th.
That's right, 12th, yep, and then
joint
13th
on
is the Wednesday,
13th,
right?
And
Yeah,
then joint on the 18th as well,
okay, okay,
in case you don't get everything done.
got it. All right, we'll make sure to note those in the meeting, we'll cover the next states, but that's where I'm at. If there's new information, I'm happy to talk about it when we meet with the select board. And by new information, I mean another option that they're looking at,
We'll follow up with.
more details, yeah. Anyone else care to be in full support or lack of, or,
Vote no.
okay,
I'll be the mean person.
okay.
They've had plenty of opportunities to do cost-benefit
I
analysis.
tend to agree that, but I'm saying if we have all of that, not just, yeah, there's a used one for 10 grand, but also here's everything to support it. That's kind of where I'm at too. David?
I'm leaning the same way, but since it's a week away, right, if there's more data, if there's no more data, then I'm no, but if we can wait a week for data, I'm fine with that.
I'm happy to defer.
Okay, sounds like deferral it is. Thank you. Engine 4. It's a biggie, obviously, right? $500,000 for it.
Get a sense we're kind of
This-
stuck, aren't
Yeah, I mean,
we? We're s-
I remember asking the question, when were we without two, right? Two pumpers, right? This is the pumper to replace the one that's gonna be out of commission, because you can put your hand through the frame, and in August, it doesn't get inspected, so it gets taken off the road.
I don't know how we say no.
I'm in support of it.
Yeah, me too.
And not reluctantly, the timing is never good for a big piece of capital anyway, so even if it were, salad days in town, would probably still feel the pinch of this one, but I'm in support of it. So, that's where I'm at. Anyone care to?
Yes, I'm a yes.
I mean, yes, when I went to get my burn permit, they gave me a tour of the truck.
Oh, so you've got firsthand knowledge. They swayed you.
So they showed.
Did they give you like donuts and coffee while you're there
No,
too,
I
or
didn't
anything
get
else
that.
you have to
They
report?
didn't even give me a discount on my burn permit.
If you do the Citizens Academy.
You got a
get
senior
something
discount.
over there. It's great.
No, I did. But anyway, they showed me the cracks in the body, where the cracks exist and how they could expand because the infrastructure, is that the right word? Or
The frame.
Yeah.
the frame
Yeah.
is,
The structure, yeah.
anyway, yes.
Rusting apart. A yes it is then. Great. Ellen?
There's a fire truck for sale in New Hampshire on that one.
Drive up, take a look at it. FinCom,
There was.
field trip,
Okay, anyway, small talk.
IT, software, 17,000 in operating budget. Someone remind me what this is again?
This is the reoccurring debt for the SoftWrite financial software.
Software.
It's our main accounting and accounts payable software.
We issued debt for this?
We did, is part of a bigger debt project that includes the pumper fire truck as well.
The one that we were on last year. How much was the total software cost of it? Do you recall, roughly? Don't worry about it.
I think it's gonna be in the range of 100,000
Okay.
off the top of my head. It wasn't a cheaper software,
Okay,
but this is the end of it, so.
so we're gonna pay our bill there, right? Yes?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. 30 PCs for $10,000.
It's recurring, yep, I'm okay with it.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I am as well. Website upgrade, 13.5.
Gee, can you get a better deal and
What,
go
what's
ahead?
the,
Upgrade your own website?
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't. That would be maintenance and all the work and bringing the data over and everything. It would, obviously would allow us to be more transparent, and put more stuff that's searchable than our current website. The website has limitations. It's probably at its peak right now.
so,
This was for, I'm sorry, this was for fire department's website.
No, this is the top.
IT, yeah.
Tom's website.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wenham.gov
I'm sorry.
or
I learned to read.
.ma or whatever it is, yeah.
Yep, sorry.
Yeah, I would
MMA.gov for all
So-
those listening at home.
Wait, right, wenhamma.gov.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm good with it.
They're gonna go crash it, 'cause it's not upgraded.
Oh, yeah, they're gonna be denial of service
This is
attack, believe me, there's gonna be so many people flooding it.
I think I have a fine experience interfacing with the website, and I would use that money, like, for the compensation and classification study.
For what?
If we're gonna have 13.
You just wanna spend $15,000, don't you? Just kidding.
No, but
I like the first part.
let's just cut it
Websites
off.
work, I'm kidding.
I just didn't hear what you.
Oh,
I'm
so,
joking.
so,
Threw
I,
it totally off.
no, I think that the way I use the website, it works well.
Yeah,
But I might not know my way around it and know how to find information, I'm not sure. So if I'm that's 13,500. If we're gonna spend that, I would rather spend money on like the compensation and classification study.
oh.
To me,
oh.
that seems like it would be,
you're in stronger
A
support
higher
of that
priority,
similar
yes.
dollar spend going
Yes.
towards that.
But there may
Yeah.
be some things about the website's functioning that I'm not aware of.
That's just it. Like, if it's a complete bear, if it's taking up like a half an FTE or whatever to keep it up and running, I'm just making that
We don't
up.
even know where our website's hosted. It's hosted someplace in Beverly, and I can't even get an answer on that. So at least now I know.
Is it micro support or no, that is involved with it?
I don't even
It's
think.
like a even completely separate company.
Yeah.
My only thought is that
in a parking
It's like
lot.
it's security is gonna be a challenge.
websites are notorious for being something that should be very inexpensive and is often very expensive, and it's not really, you don't really get what you pay for. You need someone who's like dedicated to it on the business side, like as the client, to really drive it. And you can't just turn it over to, I'm just kind of preaching here, you can't just say like, yeah, build this website, they'll say, oh yeah, well, look at your existing website, we'll identify our areas for, it's gonna be the same thing, you know what I mean? Like, you have to really be engaged, or someone does, to have a vision and like, I want to do this and specify requirements. In my experience with setting up websites where I've unfortunately been on the side of paying too much for something that was ill-defined, and it's just like, that's another website, it's got a nice clean. It's a little cleaner in many respects, but it accomplishes the same thing. So, like, it's outdated, and it kind of gets the job done. At the same time, it's not great. So I'm sure it could be totally revamped and improved. So I'm generally in support of it. I don't really know. I don't have a good handle on like what it should cost. I mean, is it?
I think your suggestion, though, if we didn't need it, to move it towards the classification study,
Yeah.
I think that's worthy of discussion.
As a trade-off,
Yeah,
as a priority.
yeah.
On the other hand, one, it has an immediate impact to the town, both employees and residents. The other, less, right, the impact might be felt over time
Mhm.
with the classification study.
Yeah.
And, what's the pain of not upgrading the website, I think is what I'm, I don't know. Anthony makes a point that like, we don't even really have the details on it, so that's not good, but could we firm that up by like getting a handle on it, and I don't know. Just throw that out there. I'm gonna stop talking.
There
about
must
the
have been a
website.
reason that this was put in here. Maybe we could have a discussion about what drove this request.
It's just the limitations, really, with our current website. Having used, the websites that most municipalities use, there's so much more you can do with it. Punching out information to residents, having alerts, different types of alerts that.
Paying bills online, can you do that on
No.
this?
We can do that.
We already have. I
Yeah,
have
we
that.
do that, yeah.
Oh, we do.
But we
that.
don't know
Yeah.
who's processing those, who's hosting that data.
No, we don't know who's hosting our website.
Yep.
The payment portal is a separate contractor.
Yeah.
Your data is safe in terms of you're paying your
Right,
credit card payments for your property taxes online, which we're due on Monday, so,
little plug.
little plug. Can I speak to another issue with the website
Yeah.
too? That, I will say that there's a core group of people that are updating our website on a regular basis, that have like a lot of the know-how, and I credit a lot of that to Nikki. She spends a lot of time, tweaking the website, and to Anthony's point, there's a lot of limitations. Nikki has finagled it into like ways that I didn't think that it could work, but I will say that it is very convoluted, for lack of a better word, and I've used that twice tonight, so I apologize. And it's very challenging to teach as a website, so it's hard to train folks on how to update their own department websites. So there's a lot of like boards and committees and departments that come to myself or to Nikki at different points in time, because it's not an easy thing to just like throw a flyer up. It takes like multiple steps to put something on the website, which is a really it's a big time, it's a time suck a lot of times with departments, because they don't have the capacity, it is, to do it themselves. So we're like staffing it to other departments, and it's just not a very easy, user-friendly website to post things on and to set up pages.
So do we have a proposal for that 13.5?
We did have a quote,
We did have a quote from the very
Civic Plus.
Civic Plus, thank you.
Okay. And I guess it'd be great if that quote specifically addressed those pain points that you bring up. like, we know that you're having trouble with this, we're gonna do this for it. That's all. I'm never really, as you can tell, overly impressed with website redesign at times. There are great websites and bad websites, that's for sure. But if there are pain points, then that's what we'd have to address and make sure that that 13.5
And this is an upgrade, not a
helped
redesign.
efficient. Sorry, yeah, I'm calling it something.
Yeah.
But it, probably, if someone new is hosting it and developing the templates, then it, or style sheets or whatever, then it probably takes on a look and feel that, yeah, you're right, I don't know, I guess I don't know the scope of it.
Yeah.
I'll forward you the email.
And have you seen web pages that this same company has done, and you like the web pages? It's a good interface.
Yeah, I did it in Littleton. We won first place in the Mass Municipal Association for websites, so it's,
It's a pretty
So,
common company.
You use the same company for the Littleton website, so you've had experience with them? Oh, okay. That's good to know.
They're a pretty common vendor in the Commonwealth.
Could you say the name again?
Civic Plus.
Civic Plus. I'll send you the
Perfect.
quote, and it breaks it down
Okay.
exactly what they
Okay.
do with the annual maintenance cost.
Okay.
Do it from here.
If we know that it's gonna save us time and effort and be a better means of communicating with public and people can get, boards and committees, employees, everyone can get what they need, I'm generally supportive. That's helpful to know that we've had experience with not only this company, but that specific product in the same application, town's website. And I guess I'm generally supportive, given that.
I'd say yes to supporting it.
Yes.
Yes.
Are we, okay,
Yes.
we're across the board. And I'll check out Littleton's website too, compare it to ours.
Yeah,
Please do.
there isn't, just looking at the quote, yeah, website development was $10,000, the annual fee is $3,500.
Okay,
forward.
hosting and all that,
Yeah.
tech support and questions, okay, good, yeah, it'll be good to have,
And they do have an option where you can pay $68.33 over 3 years.
And they have security in there in terms of, security upgrades and everything else in there.
Is that a part of the annual?
Yeah, it's part of the annual maintenance.
okay, shall we move to iron rail?
Yep.
Great, roofing, gutter, and fascia boards,
They're paying for it.
yep, through bands, yep, keep paying for that, for how long? Do we know?
That's 10
Until
years,
we-
and we're on year 2 right now.
Okay, ways to go, same with the road and paving, right, that's new
Yeah.
also, that's all brand new,
That's
yep,
all
that's
part
out
of
of the
it.
iron rail capital, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we're in support of those?
Yep.
Great. And then subject system redesign, which we've heard a lot about.
Yep.
Yep.
That's just the design and then Bill's team can do it for short money or something like that?
That's right.
In-house.
Yeah,
In-house.
yeah, that's great.
Who's doing the design? Is it,
We
is it,
haven't
we've someone,
procured anybody yet.
oh, we haven't, okay. So we're setting aside 10,000 for it.
That, we did check in with our health agent who designed systems for that
Okay.
pricing as well.
All right. We're all in support of that? Is that a yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds like that could get ugly if it wasn't addressed. And we get great, literally, right? And then we get great revenue from our tenants there and the
That's right.
town makes great use of it also, so we're happy about that. Library server, 18,000.
Yep.
Yep.
I think it's probably critical, so to the
Oh,
library's
that's huge,
infrastructure,
huge,
yeah.
A whole lot. Yeah.
And they are expensive. We all good with the server?
Yep.
Yes.
Sounds good. The roof on the library,
Is that shared cost?
That was my question.
Yeah.
Yes. So both of these library ones are in Hamilton will pay their share.
So we get
Is this
reimbursed.
our share?
So Hamilton will give us back, well, not give us, $61,380 is their share.
It's
So
on,
it's-
it's
They're
on
like-
page
1/3,
two.
2/3 roughly.
Yeah, they're like
Yeah.
about 2/3
It's on the
percent.
second
Okay.
page, the breakdown at the bottom, what we get back.
So we'll pay for it up front, and they
They
give us their
reimburse us.
assessment.
Oh.
And it's back for like they do it quarterly, their
Right.
assessment.
It's broken down right on the end of page 2.
so be
I'm
about
in
50
support
from
of
them?
it.
Is that right?
That roof is, how old is that roof now? 20?
Since the beginning of
Yes.
the building's
Yes, it is.
life.
It's gone by very quickly.
Is that the split for all of the library stuff? That's the same split according to,
IMA.
in the IMA basis, that split on households?
The assessed value.
Assessed value, that's right, thank you. But that's much more than 2/3, isn't it? 60, 61, I mean,
61 out of 93,000 total.
oh, where am I? Yes, thank you. I was thinking the 75K, forgetting the server. Yes, thank you, Jackie. Okay, so we're yes to those. Some of that roof is metal,
I don't know, never been up there, but
nor have I, for the record, stated clearly.
That's a real field trip.
But I just
the
noticed
last
it.
thing you want
It's all
is
cut
a
up.
leaky roof in a library to destroy your main.
Your new server and your books.
Your new server and your main business purpose.
Right, right.
So Hamilton has to vote on this too, correct?
Yes, and Kim's been meeting with the Hamilton Capital Planning Committee throughout the process.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yes, and they've seen it, I've built it into, I always send over to Marissa, the finance director in Hamilton, our breakout. So she's seen the assessment that they're expected, then it has this capital built into it.
Okay.
So they're aware.
Did I hear Chief Perkins say that they were willing to defer the administrative vehicle, or am I crazy on that? Am I making that up?
This is a lease of a vehicle we already have, so
don't
it'd be
worry,
the
yeah.
next one,
Yeah, that we're deferring.
the next lease vehicle.
For next year.
To 23.
This is one we already own,
Yeah, we have, this is a required payment.
so we're paying that, of course.
Oh,
Right.
oh.
There's a deferral, not of the discussion, but of the other administrative, that was a lower priority administrative vehicle, right?
They
You're
built
talking
that
about-
into 23, if I understood
Yeah,
the
yeah.
response.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
Right?
right,
23 forward, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
thank you. What about the Frontline Cruiser, our formula of one a year?
After hearing, reminding us of the
We've
discussion
been
of
repeatedly reminded.
8 or 9 years ago, that was a real problem. When we had to go and replace 4
Yeah.
cruisers in 1 year.
I think you gotta just keep in mind the wear and tear on them. I mean, they're doing 35,000 miles a year, right?
And you got 20-plus people driving these things. I mean,
Let's stick to the plan.
Yeah.
You're gonna pay for it one way or the other. You're gonna have 2 years from now, if we have to buy 4 cruisers or at least 4 cruisers, we're gonna be in trouble.
Right.
Not in trouble, but it's gonna be a significant cost.
Feel the pain worse. Feels like we're in support of that?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep.
Thank you. Rifles are, it sounds like dropping and cut in half from 10 to 5, so 7,000-ish. Which, is that is BOS deferred because it's still up for discussion, or was that the result? That was the result of it?
Asking if they could split it up, and then,
That's right.
they haven't met again since, Chief Perkins came back saying they can split
They
it
can
up.
split it.
I'm willing to say I support the,
Continuing discussion, or,
well,
No.
I'm willing to say support the reduced cut. They made an effort to
Yeah.
cut in half, and
I'm a yes also.
Okay.
on
yeah,
that,
it's
the half and half
7,000
plan.
over 2 years.
exact 14,000 over 2 years, 7 and
Yeah.
21.
Yeah. Yeah, 7/21, 7/21.
Right.
5 and 5, yeah.
So, and kind of in anticipation maybe of BOS being on the same page, well, maybe we'll get ahead of the game.
All right.
On to page 2, finding our rhythm, approaching the end, SCADA system. Yeah, I mean, I asked Eric, like, what does this let us do? Because, you know, from his expertise and critical role, the water department there, you can't afford it to fail. And he did make the comment that the current thing works and gets the job done, but I guess if it's no longer supported, and it's also not 50, right?
It's 150.
150.
It's 150.
Yeah.
It's a big ticket item. I don't know, I mean, are we,
And they can't fund it themselves.
No, it'd be from their
It's a-
surplus.
Yeah,
Their
it's all
surplus.
coming out of water.
that's right, yeah, it's not in our operating budget.
Yeah, it doesn't hit the tax rate.
Just getting too late.
350, did he say, or did you?
Still a lot of money for it.
Around there,
And they're taking 150 out, leaves them with $250,000, $200,000,
Yeah.
and that will be replenished
Yeah.
over the
Yeah.
course of 12 months.
Yeah, depending
Well, I don't think
on their
that,
expenses.
that 350 wasn't from 1 year.
No.
No, multiple years. It'll be
Multiple
replenished
years.
over
That's
time.
like-
But
it's like
I
everything.
know we're not gonna replenish the 150, but what does it replenish itself?
re-
Well, it
refresh
all
rate.
depends on the year, the tighter they budget, you know, just like
35,
town hall, like, you know,
40,000.
the tighter
Like
we.
350K now, or something like that, right? In
Yeah.
reserves.
Right.
So.
I think last year, I'd have to look at, I can give you the numbers, how much they ended up netting last year, but
Yeah.
my guess it was probably around 30, plus 30 to 50, probably in that.
Which seems
range would be my guess.
reasonable, like percentage-wise, right? Because their goal is to not be having a whole lot of surplus, obviously.
So,
At some point, water pipes are gonna need to be replaced, and
Yeah,
That's what
and that's the capital piece also, right? The 35,000 that goes, how much is in the capital reserve?
so,
This will be the
This-
third
the-
year.
so
Yeah, 70 right
70
now.
now and 105, so
Got it,
that
okay.
might change the valve when the time comes.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
well,
Thanks for the bonding.
it's his money, he says he needs it, he's usually pretty good in years past. so
Agreed,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
supporting or confirming my
I
support.
think that too, the thing I got out of that, the biggest thing was those copper lines. Those need to be replaced, and that's what this runs on right now. So
Right.
if those can't use those anymore, then that's really not working.
That's the glaring dependency with no contingency should you
Yes.
break a little old copper line
Yep.
that none of us use anymore, right?
Like I said, yeah, like you said, if a tree falls on one
No
and
one
one goes
uses it,
down,
yeah,
then
yeah.
they're not gonna replace it and it's out of commission.
I
Right.
support both of those.
You asked about fiber, right? The FiOS, or was it you that asked about fiber optics?
No, I was asking a more
No, I didn't.
concrete problem.
Someone,
You
someone,
did
I don't
assess
think,
the actual water pipes.
I didn't ask about
in
fiber
place.
optics.
I mentioned five.
You did,
Oh,
yeah,
that's what
you
it
did,
is.
yeah. I didn't, I think it was a good question.
Spot checking.
Not that they'd have their own fiber ring, but FiOS is here, right? A lot of people have FiOS.
Well, we are working on regional IT right now, so we're actually building a fiber loop with 5 other communities.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're connected to Hamilton, and the state is paying to connect Danvers to
Essex.
Wenham. Was Essex?
It goes
I'm
all the
trying
way
to think
from
of-
Danvers to Essex, and
Yes.
Wenham and Hamilton are the connectors.
So we're trying to make this loop, and our next connection is Danvers to Wenham, which is hopefully by doing this, and Danvers takes the lead, it allows us to purchasing power strength and maybe do some regional IT
Mm-hmm,
tech costs there.
mm-hmm. That's good.
So that fiber is gonna be built, that connection, another connection to Wenham in the coming few months.
It's worth noting that wireless system that we're gonna pay for can also go down, right? And then we pay someone to
Yep.
come in and fix it. The difference is we can do that, whereas we know that Verizon isn't gonna fix the copper line. They'll say you're stuck, and then that forces our hand then. So, yeah, I think that makes sense to support it.
I vote yes.
Okay, cool.
Clarification.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I'm already done, I gotta I gotta ask for clarification on something.
Go right ahead.
On the last sheet, so the 656, give or take, that's our total of capital, that's gonna come out of our budget? I mean, with all the puts and takes?
Yeah, so-
656 is a roughly the number.
Yeah, so the,
No, was it a yes or a no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
general
That's
fund
all
free
I need.
cash, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions on any of these? And then we can move to, motion to vote.
Good luck with
Someone make a
this one.
motion.
I
David, you're on it.
I make a motion that we approve,
3 hours into the
yeah. I make a motion that we approve the capital improvement program that the FinCom has voted to approve today, and also within that, defer the master plan compensation classification study, and what was the other one?
Ambulance.
And the ambulance. So just to rewrite for Catherine, I'll make a motion that we pass everything on the capital improvement program submitted to us, except for deferring the master plan, the compensation classification study, and the ambulance.
Second.
Right? All in favor?
Second?
Aye.
Thank you.
Let's move
Don't
this-
tell me the BOS made it through that in like half an hour.
Jack's the chair.
Okay,
We're a deliberative body.
As you should.
deliberative body. Having gone out of order, we went through 3, and before that, 4 on the audit committee matter, and now the simpler financial articles that are routine. Are these all buttoned up and ready to go, pending what types of changes?
These are on the warrant
Yep.
and awaiting your recommendation. And council will review the final versions for form. But these 4 are financial articles on the warrant, looking for your vote of support or not.
Okay,
But the numbers aren't necessarily correct.
The numbers and the commentary are up to date.
Even the water one?
Well, that's just for the transfer of the 35,000, not for the SCADA.
Oh, okay.
That's just the annual transfer.
so good point. Will that be a separate article for the SCADA?
Yes, that's what he's,
Okay,
It could be a separate article if you want this one, if this is a question for the BOS, if
Yeah.
they want this one that happens every year to be a separate article, so it can go in a consent calendar.
Yeah.
And then have the other one be an item,
Yeah.
or we could pair them together, but then it kinda necessitates pulling it from the consent calendar. So that's a structural question, I think, for the
yeah,
selectmen.
sure. And barring that, are these all, I forget if these are consent calendar?
Typically, these are what go in a consent calendar if the selectmen establish one.
Okay, right, as procedural in nature. Okay, cool. So let's start in on article number not yet determined for cemetery and other trust funds. See if the town will vote to accept the cemetery trust funds as received in FY '19. I don't think I need to read all this, but as printed in part 1 of the town report, on file with the town clerk. Standard acceptance article required to enable expenditure of annually accruing funds from trust donations for general restricted purposes, provided by terms like gift or trust. This is one that we,
We vote and say, we approve this warrant, or just we approve the language?
Whether or not you recommend town meeting take action on this item.
right.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion. Did you want to deliberate more? Or did you-
No, that's fine. So, yeah, establish a motion that the, no, go ahead.
Okay,
It's fine. Go for it.
I establish a motion that the finance committee
Let's recommend favorable action.
recommend favorable action on article to be determined entitled cemetery and other trust funds.
Second.
Any questions on this one or discussion? Let's move to vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, cemetery maintenance fund transfer.
Your turn.
No, go right ahead. You're doing such a great
It's
job.
Carrie's turn. I make a motion that the FinCom committee support.
I just found my papers, I don't know where we are.
Okay.
Second,
I don't know
bottom
what I'm
page.
doing.
The $6,000 transfer.
You're not remembering this, as I'm not, because there's not a whole lot to it. Every year I ask the same question around this,
And every year it gets passed very
and I
quickly.
get the same answer, right?
So are we ready for a motion?
David's
We
making
did for the
motion.
first one.
We did the first one.
We did the first one.
You voted on it.
Cemetery.
No, I
maintenance
know,
fund.
so are we waiting?
Yep, David's gonna
I
finish up
was,
the
I was
motion.
being anecdotal, saying someone else start speaking.
Oh,
But, because
okay.
Alex has been speaking for 3 hours. But I make a motion that the FinCom committee, what is the term, favorably?
Recommend favorable action.
Recommend favorable action on article to be determined titled cemetery maintenance fund transfer.
Second. Questions? Nope. All in favor?
Right?
Aye.
I'll keep going since I'm on a.
You're on a roll.
I'm on a roll. I make a motion that
This is
the FinCom committee take favorable action on article number to be determined, but entitled road work, chapter 90 funding.
And maybe recommend.
Recommend favorable, I
action.
thought I said that.
Favorable
The
action.
FinCom committee recommend favorable action on article to be determined road work, chapter 90 funding.
Second.
All in favor?
Make a motion that the FinCom committee take favorable action on article number to be determined entitled Transfer from Water Operating Budget to Water Capital Reserve Fund.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And we may have one more, or I suppose if it gets lumped in with that, we'll just need to vote again on it, right? Because it changes materially. Thank you. And thanks for teeing these up nice and early.
Thank you.
It's great. Saves time down the road. I know that was the motivation, right?
Yeah, Chris will
Wonderful.
give you a few every week. As the selectmen add a couple onto the warrant, you guys will get a couple more every week.
I like it. Great.
That's good.
Okay, what about backup warrant hearing date?
So that was just, Nikki wanted to, just in case that Monday, March 30th, something came up and didn't work, there would be a backup
Okay.
date. She has, March 31st, April 2nd, and April 3rd, Bucher has space for us at, she's already reached out, and those are the other days they have available.
Okay.
And right now it's scheduled for April 1st.
No, March
Oh,
30th.
I have an old.
Yeah, I had April 1st too, but it's scheduled for March 30th?
Are you looking at last year's schedule maybe?
I think
Or
that-
an early
yeah,
version of this year's schedule?
Early version, I think it was, yeah.
So it's
This
scheduled
was
for
hand-
March 30th? I don't have my.
It's 2020, it shows 2020
Yeah. Okay, anyway, so March 30th.
That works for me.
for warrant hearing.
Yeah, I'm around.
What day is
that
that?
week.
That's the normal Monday. That's the planned warrant hearing.
Right. Are we looking to establish a backup should that not work?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, and why would that not work again?
Snow,
Oh, just, okay.
weather,
Unforeseen
The copper wire
circumstances.
still
yeah,
Yes.
just weather.
I have no strong opinion
Yeah,
as to
a pandemic.
31st for a second.
No, Tuesdays work better just because I don't have practices.
March 31st?
Yeah.
That's one of
Does that work for everybody?
days.
As a backup, next day?
Yes, yep.
Everything's top of mind still?
Perfect.
Okay. Our preference would be for the 31st.
Okay.
Great.
That's that's a community meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I just, in terms of community meetings, I would like to put this public. I've had 2 requests that we do and whether we're able to or not, a finance presentation to the Council on Aging.
I actually can speak to that as well, Jim.
Oh, good.
Because Jim reached out to me today,
Oh, good.
and I wanted to bring it up under matters, I was gonna actually talk to you offline, Alex, and then
Oh,
bring it up
I'm
next
glad you
week,
brought it up.
but,
It's a great idea.
a few years ago, the FinCom did a budget forum, and it was really well attended. I would think it was like 30-something people, 35
The
people
one
came.
here?
The one
2 years
here, it
ago?
was, yeah, we counted like 30 to 35 people. The COA has 2 dates available that they are offering, but what I said to Jim Reynolds is that if we could work those 2 dates into, if you guys wanted to do a couple different ones, spread the wealth, have a couple different people do each one, so you don't have any open meeting law issues, and you can kind of spread the load. But if you wanted to set up some kind of series of informational, a couple at the COA, maybe one here at Town Hall, or 2.
I think it totally makes sense and is kind of a must.
Yeah, and I
Must
think,
action.
it has benefits in terms of getting the word out there, even if we do the COA and everything isn't 100% pinned down, you can give a kind of a general overview, I think, to folks. And
Do you want to discuss this on the 13th jointly with BOS, or?
It's fine. Sounds good. Yeah. And I think whatever the role is jointly, I think we'll participate either way.
yeah,
If BOS wants to, that's awesome. And if BOS wants to take the lead, that's fine
And
too.
with the 13th, if you pick some dates that evening, that can, we can ask Jim to push the COA newsletter a little bit and get those into the newsletter so that they get, that's a 900 person mailing list for the newsletter, so it'd be great to get it out there.
Sorry, Jim's date that he said was March.
The dates Jim gave for the event where they wanted to do Saturday, March 7th at 10 a.m. at the COA, or Wednesday, March 18th at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the COA.
I thought it was and, both.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, and.
Yeah.
Those were the two Jim was hoping to do.
March 10th and March 18th?
7th
March
and
7th
18th,
and 18th.
from
Se-
10 to 11.
March 7th and the 18th?
Yes, from 10 to 11 a.m. for both.
For both.
And so that's where I had spoken to Jim saying, we'll talk about adding an evening one or two at town hall for folks that aren't not able to do the mornings.
Eighteenth is a Wednesday.
Correct.
Okay.
And the 7th is a Saturday, did you say?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so maybe as a takeaway, we can check calendars and
At the
people
next
can
meeting?
indicate, yeah, who, discuss it, yep, the next meeting and indicate who
Okay, good.
is able to participate. I'm more than happy to, certainly for the Saturday anyway. The Wednesday, I could potentially, just don't know yet.
And Jim Reynolds said he's going to put an advertisement for those events in the Salem News as well. So it'd be good to have all of those next week, so that way we can get the word out.
Okay. But I do think a general budget forum is probably in order too, in light of the likely significant override request. Okay. Great. Any other matters? If not, then
We have an updated budget calendar.
Oh, yeah.
This I thought I got a couple weeks ago.
I can email you one, Carrie.
Okay.
Can you send it to everybody, please?
Yeah,
Thanks so
absolutely.
much. Dates do change, so that'll be good to sync up. Got the big stuff coming soon. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Great, second. All in favor?
All right.
Thank you very much.